Hi, can everybody hear me? Excellent. Um, hello. I'm sorry that my angle is kind of weird here. I was going to try to set it up beforehand, but we didn't have time for that. And I'm also waiting for a new desk, so my space is kind of weird right now. Welcome to my panel. Um, Let me see if I can get in there. There we go. Hi, everyone. So, um, where should I start? With the stuff that you probably will need. So that kind of depends on how your ocarina is broken. But some of the first essentials are gloves, and I only have one left because I'm so prepared, um, and a mask, which I hope everybody has. This is not actually the kind of mask that you should use, but this is the one I'm going to be using today for the short time that I'll need to use it. Um, Super glue, I suggest a gel kind of super glue. And and this is my piece de resistance. I'm probably pronouncing that incorrectly. This is JB Waterweld. It is, let me get a little closer to the camera. It is a solid putty epoxy, two-part. This is what I use for everything. It hardens almost as hard as fired clay. Maybe, I kind of think it's actually even a little stronger than hardened clay. And it's also moldable for a few minutes. So I will link all of that and just link all of that later if need be. Hold on, I'm looking at the chat for a second here. Okay. So today I have a broken ocarina, actually a couple of them. One that I have already started fixing, and I'm waiting for that to dry so that I can show the next step after this one. And one that is actually a really nice, simple, easy to fix thing. If this happens to your ocarina, it falls on the ground, this happens, this is the best case scenario. So, all right, I'll get right to it. I like to use the gel super glue just to start. This basically just makes a good solid seal that won't pop off. And I like to use the gel just because it doesn't run inside. So and I just put just a tiny bit. All right, yeah, I'll link them in just a little bit. And these, of course, are going to be links from within the US. So you just put just a little bit, just along the break. Oh, and something that I wanted to show, and actually maybe I shouldn't do that now that, it's fine. Something I've noticed when an ocarina is well made is even when it's broken like this, it still plays. So that's when that happens, it still plays. I'm like, I think that was pretty well made. All right. So you just line it right up. And you just hold it there. And this is quick drying, so it's just like, I'd say 60 seconds tops. So something that can happen when you're fixing them, this of course, I wouldn't suggest going out and breaking an ocarina just to do this. But sometimes if there are it'll be a little out of tune once you have put it back together just because there's slight differences in the size and everything. So I'll go over some tricks to retuning it, and sometimes you can even make it sound better than it did before. Oops, it came. All right. So right now it's staying together pretty good. And then, oh yeah, some other important steps. Keep some alcohol pads with you because a lot of the stuff is alcohol soluble, so it'll get off your fingers, and some water with you. I like to try to let it sit for a day. Sometimes I don't have that luxury, but it cures, and not very long. It cures in, this actually doesn't even say. But basically, once it's staying together pretty good, you can continue working with it fairly safely. And once again, this is a nice, clean break. So this one's really simple, and I'm still not quite done yet. I will show you the next step after this. And then I'll just set that aside to dry for a little bit. And then I will show the next step. So this is an exception to the gel glue. So the person dropped it and it just cracked all along here, but did not pop all the way open. Sometimes I will put in a little needle tool like this, and I'll stick it in the break and I'll see if it'll pop the rest of the way open. And if it does, then I'll just pop it the rest of the way open. This didn't want to, so I didn't want to do that. This person also wants a new finish put on it, so I went ahead and put it in the kiln to burn off the original finish from this Noble. It usually has like a shellac, I believe, is what it's on it. And they had already put some glue in there that wasn't really sitting right, so that burned off all of that glue that was down inside of there. So then I took liquid super glue instead of this gel super glue, and I sort of dripped it down inside of the crack and then just held it together just so that it would stabilize it. And then what I did was I took some of this epoxy, and you just need a tiny, tiny, tiny amount. I used not even 1/4 of an inch. And then you just squeeze it together, and then you squeeze it as hard as you can down inside the crack and make it a little bigger than the crack. And then you just let that sit. Once again, I usually wait a day. This has actually only been like this for about an hour, but I wanted to be able to show you how you do this. And this is when, oh, it's shapeable too. So like if there are big cracks in it, like you'll see on this one, it has a big crack in it, you can just shove the stuff down in there and smooth it out, and it should be good. And then I'm going to put on my, oh, I can't. Maybe I can put it over my earphones. I can. This is just to keep the dust out of my face. And I take a slightly higher grit sandpaper. This is 120 grit. I just rip a little bit off. And then it just gets sanded smooth. And this stuff paints and sands, and I'm kind of curious to see what it would do in the kiln. Probably burn off, but ocarinas are usually fired at a certain cone, usually up to 04. And so if I want to burn off a finish, I actually just make sure I burn it to lower than that 04. And that's usually a 4 to 8 hour process for the initial firing. And then it's got to sit in the kiln for an additional 4 to 8 hours, depending on how long the ocarina was firing for. But if you don't have access to a kiln and you want to get the finish off of it, you just sand it. It's a lot of work, but and this is actually still a little too sticky to sand. But as you can see, it's it's actually really, really simple, especially if it's a break like this. Like either of these. Yeah, I'm gonna actually have to let that sit for a little bit longer. Now, a little bit more intricate is something that I'm currently working on. And so these are still actually, believe it or not, probably repairable. Someone fell on top of their ocarina. And for this, all I can say is oh, sorry, let me read this chat real fast. Yes. So the glue and the epoxy are for if you're not going to refire it with a glaze afterward. The only thing you can do if you're gluing or epoxying it is paint it. That's for Christina Lago. And for where I learned it, this was just breaking ocarinas and trying to figure out how to fix them. It's really, you just have to do it. And you just have to not be afraid to do it. A lot of people are afraid to mess up their ocarinas, but if you've dropped it, it's already broken anyway. So I'm gonna take this off since I'm done with the dusting for now. So when you have a break that's this bad, what you want to try to do is get up as much of the pieces that you have, as much as the big pieces that you have, and you start out putting it together just like a puzzle. Yeah, trial and error, lots of that. And you want to try to start from the inside out. So build as much of the inside back up before you start building to the outside. And as you're building the inside out, start putting the epoxy putty, down inside the chambers. And you flatten it out as much as you can and you just let it dry in there. I'll get to the retuning in a bit. So, and just slowly and surely, you just stick the pieces together and you end up with larger pieces at the very end. And that's where you employ the same things that I just talked about. Wherever it's just got cracks, you try to put super glue down in it. And the bigger cracks on the outside, you fill it with the epoxy. And you just flatten it down, you let it dry, and then you sand it smooth. And I always start with a rougher, like a 120 grit sandpaper. And then I go down to a smoother, like 220, and then I finish off smoothing it off with a 320 grit sandpaper. And then once you're done with all of that, if you're lucky, it's still in tune. And if you're not lucky, then all you need to do, so long as it still plays the sounds all the way up, you just get a tuner and you start either filling in holes, and I always start, I play it and I see where it's out of tune, and I usually use the sub holes to tune it up or down. So I'll open up the sub holes or close up the sub holes. And as I'm doing that, I make sure that it still plays all the way up and try to get more and more in tune. And what I mean by that is so you'll want to naturally play with that curve that was talked about in an earlier session. You'll want to try to make sure it keeps following a curve. So you'll kind of raise your breath pressure, just how you naturally want to play. And that's where you can end up making it sound better than it did before, because then it matches your breath pressure, what you prefer. So you just play it in the way you want to. Listen to the notes, use a tuner to make it lower, to make it a note lower. You'll fill in the hole before it, and the opposite to make it higher. It's kind of a scary process at first, but once you start to get the hang of it, it becomes easier and easier. A lot of people very much say don't do it, but if your ocarina has already been broken, there's no reason not to. And what I do for filling in the holes is I'll either use that same epoxy, or I'll use like a polyurethane with a tiny brush, and I'll just fill in the holes. Or I have this thing that's like a tiny Dremel, and it's called a bead reamer, and you can get them electric or not. And that's about it for that. Is there any questions about that? Or any of the other rest of the process about fixing?
Charles asks about retuning if you haven't answered that.
Yeah, I asked. I answered
Okay,
as well as I
sorry
could.
about that.
I might be able to answer a little better if you've got a more.
I didn't get any questions on the Q&A. I only got a few in the chat,
Okay.
but I guess one question that I can ask is, what is like the easiest glaze to apply on an ocarina?
So if your ocarina is not already glazed, if it's like a noble ocarina, um, then you can use shellac. The easiest thing to use is I actually just use this Deco Art Americana paint,
Oh,
and it. I've used ceramic paints, specifically ceramic paints, and I think that this actually works the best of any of them that I've done.
okay.
Oh,
I
and that
think that
actually
also
answers another
answers
question.
somebody else's question that was asking you, when you paint, what kind of paint do you use?
Yeah, I use almost exclusively this after using the most expensive stuff you can. Going through everything, this has worked better than anything else. I have hundreds of bottles of this stuff, and I go through hundreds of bottles of this stuff. I haven't had any complaints of it wearing off, um,
Hmm.
or anything like that. And that was part of my session, was I was going to quickly, to show you how easy it is, paint one of my little leaf ocarinas. Um,
Okay. I did get another question in the Q&A. It says, if a tone hole has been chipped, do you fix that after gluing the big pieces together with the epoxy like subholes? Like with subholes?
yes, that depends. So as I said, with working from the inside out, if the chip is down on the inside, you'll wanna try to fix that first from the inside and smooth it out as much as you can. If it's on the outside, then you just do it after it's glued. And that's actually the little guy here has exactly that. One of the little holes is chipped just slightly.
Oh,
Um, and that wasn't
super
on the
small.
inside at all, so it should be. In fact, this probably plays just fine now. Oh, it's a little flat. But of course, I don't know how it played before. That's one thing. You'll
Okay.
want to try to think about how it played before, and try to either match those characteristics, or um, make them better, make them match what you like. What was it that Robert said? He probably had something very good to
Uh,
point
yeah.
out about the tuning.
He
So
said
a
you
lot
could
of this,
measure. Oh, go
oh
ahead.
sorry, a lot of this for me is intuitive. It's I've tried to write it down, and the more I try to write it down, the more convoluted it sounds.
Hmm.
Um, you just sort of get a feel for it.
Robert had said you can measure the tuning by measuring how flat the pitch of a note falls when the next hole is opened without changing your blowing pressure.
Yes, exactly. Unless you're somebody who, like me, I like a rising breath ocarina. So I tend to uh, raise my breath a little bit on the next note. But again, like if I were to break one of Robert's ocarinas, knowing how his play just perfectly with an almost imperceptible curve upward, I would know that I would want to do exactly that. With an ICO ocarina, I know that they're rising breath, so I would follow that.
And I have another question from Tim. He asked the question that I was very curious about. Does the glaze affect the tuning if you're not careful?
If you're not careful, yes. I am not someone who believes at all that the finish affects the ocarina itself. Only the way you apply, just like the way you make an ocarina. So I avoid, here's one that I've refinished recently. This is one of Robert's. I avoid the voicing completely when I do ocarinas. A little bit like a single layer of paint on there is okay, so long as it doesn't get down inside. But you'll find sometimes, especially with straw-fired ocarinas that have lacquer, that the lacquer has fallen down inside of that voicing. And sometimes even with glaze that'll happen. And yes, that can definitely affect the tone. It can make it so moisture builds up too fast, and it's even worse than a plastic ocarina when that happens.
Oh wow.
And it can get down inside the sound holes and shrink. Just as I was saying with the retuning, when you either put something in the holes or drill out the holes to affect the tuning, that can affect the tuning there. But the glaze itself has no effect. Having glazed and painted hundreds of ocarinas at this point, I can promise you that the type of finish it gets, so long as you don't get messy with it, does not affect the tone at all.
That's super interesting to know. I do have another question from Jolene. She asks, "Do you put anything on top of the paint to finish it?"
Yes, I put. There are 3 different kinds of varnishes that I use. All of them also by Americana. Once again, have used tons and tons and tons of other ones, and other ones tend to have a strange smell or tend to wear off really fast. Even ones that are meant for ceramic. And so I use. Let's see if I have any bottles right here. My absolute favorite is called Durasoft Soft Touch. Can you hear me still? My sound
Yes,
thing
we can
just
hear
went
you.
crazy. Let's see if I have. Oh yes, here it is. This is my absolute favorite to use.
What is it called? Say it
It's
again.
called Deco Art. It's Americana. And it's called Duraclear Soft Touch. It has the best feeling for playing, and that's another thing that can affect. So, like a slippery glazed ocarina can be uncomfortable to play, or one with a really tacky paint can feel difficult to play, depending on your own skin, really, and how your lips are and everything. So that can affect how it sounds, and that you can't play it as well if you can't hold it as well, if that makes sense. But this stuff, I have not had a single complaint from anyone. It feels like velvet in your hands, but it's still really strong.
Would you be willing to share that in the resources after the
Yes.
panel?
Yes, certainly. I'll put all of my links to everything that I use in the resources.
Thank you so much. I have another question. This one's from Yoko. Which varnish do you use after the paint? And I think maybe you have answered that.
Yes, I did. Somebody was saying that the video is not showing the right person currently.
I tried to fix that. Did that get fixed?
Is it okay, Robert? Okay, very good. Very, very good. But Duraclear, the Deco Art Duraclear are the ones I use them in satin, soft touch, and shiny, and they're all perfect. Some people don't like the feel of the shiny. The satin's usually nice, but the soft touch is absolutely amazing. I feel like there was another question that somebody had too.
Sorry, I closed my chat. One.
Okay.
This one's from Andrea. It says, I have a 6-hole bass Langley ocarina that has a buzzing sound like a kazoo on the lowest notes. Is there a way to fix that?
Um, that would require a lot of experimentation. One thing that you can do is you can look down inside the voicing. Let me see if I can get it. Down inside of here, right where that little slit is, and see if there's any glaze that had run down inside of that, or if there are any drips on the opening here. And that can sometimes make a buzzing sound. I would be okay taking that out. I wouldn't suggest other people do without having practiced on a lot of ocarinas first, because it can get really squirrely actually changing the sound. The if you've got an ocarina that sounds, even if it's out of tune, but it sounds well all the way up, you can almost always shrink or make larger the holes without affecting the sound. But if the sound itself is bad, you usually can't easily fix that, at least not once it's been fired.
Okay, I might have kind of a dumb question, but I'll ask you just because I know you know way more. So I've had a very similar thing than what Andrea mentioned, where an ocarina just sounds very buzzy, and it um, because I'm coming from a background of playing cello. Um, on cello, whenever it's not sealed properly, it causes a wolf or a small vibration. Is there
Um,
such a thing whenever the two halves of an ocarina are not melded together, or like they're coming apart slightly?
yes, that definitely is a thing that can happen. The one of David Ramos's, his map ram was doing that. The one that he dropped several times, and that was exactly why. As soon as it was properly sealed, it was just because the glue had come separate from being dropped. As soon as that was properly sealed again, it was fine. So that can very much do it sometimes.
And I guess before we move on to the next question, when you're fixing an ocarina like that, can you talk us through the process of that?
So usually I first, if it's an ocarina that I'm not familiar with the sound, I'll try to talk to the person that I'm fixing the ocarina for and find out what it sounded like before. And if it's a newly developed problem or not. And then I'll just look it over for any cracks. And sometimes I'll just, this is, I think, a meme in Ton right now. Sometimes I'll take tape and I'll like tape up the sub holes and I'll play it, or I'll tape up one of the upper register holes and just listen to see if that makes it go away. And then I'll know that if retuning will fix it.
Okay, that's a really great way to kind of troubleshoot through that situation. There's another question I wanted to get to, which is from Jolene. Says, "What is your favorite way to finish an ocarina? Any favorite design?"
Yes. So there are two that are currently my favorite. Both is paint. I actually prefer paint above glaze because it has a much better feeling to me. It seems to warm up better when you're playing, and it seems to sit better in your hands when you're playing, even though it's not as durable. And speaking of the durability, if a glazed ocarina gets a scratch, it's a lot more difficult to fix than if a painted ocarina gets a scratch. You can just sand a scratch and maybe put some extra paint on it or extra varnish. You can't do that with a glazed ocarina. And let's see, I think I actually have, let me see if I can share my screen. Hold on. This is maybe. Okay.
You should have sharing privileges as well.
Yeah, I actually did not have the window open, and I thought I did. So
By the way, you got a compliment. Uh, Somebody says, "I love your paint finishes, especially the metallic ones with the golden specks."
yes, that's one of my favorite ones. Um, hold on, how do I share? There we go. Share screen.
I have to say as well, Mark Chan, Tina's amazing at finishing ocarinas.
And Mark's so if I do get to painting this little leaf today, I'm actually going to do it similar to the one I did for Mark. That's one of my favorites. So this, if you can see my screen.
We can see.
Very good. That is one of my favorites. I think this a really cool effect. It actually kind of reminds me of STL's Nightingale. And how do I unshare the screen now? Oh, stop share. There we go. And then the other one is that one of Mark Chan's, which I don't know if I have a picture of it. I thought I had it up on my screen, and I don't. Sorry, bear with me for a second. And the top two in this one, the green one and the blue one, those are my absolute. That's my favorite one to do. It turns out slightly different every time, and I just love what it does every single time. It's smooth and it's catching. It's fetching, but not too loud, if that makes any sense.
So some people are saying they love the blue base, and some people are saying that they like the one at the bottom with the sails.
Yes.
You got a question about what's the toughest ocarina you have ever repaired?
That I've ever repaired. So the one I'm currently working on is probably the most challenging. I think I showed that one a second ago. But similar to that was that same one that I just showed a picture of. It was a very similar break to this one, but it was actually the voicing itself was shattered. I'll share the screen for this one too. This was the STL Purple Clay Triple, which I think you guys know how pricey those guys are. This one here, as you can see, the actual voicing was shattered. And I just did like I'm doing with this one, approached it the same way. I started from the inside and slowly worked my way out. To rebuild the voicing, I put popsicle sticks, ones that I had shaped before for my own ocarina making endeavors. I stuck them in there and I built the epoxy up around those before I put the second half down. And then when it was almost completely dry, I pulled out the popsicle sticks. And this was, if anybody knows Suba, that was his baby. So I think that's all I have. I can really quickly show how easy it is to paint an ocarina. It only takes a few minutes just to slap some bits together here. And this guy will get, and I'll share, once I've got these guys all finished too, because I don't know what this person wants on their ocarina yet. They might want to keep that wood-like finish on it, which I can still do. I was afraid that it would fire off when I fired off the shellac, but it stayed, and I was very pleased about that. Oh, you're very lucky, Charles. I have my very, very first double. The so neck straps. Don't use them as neck straps. That's the takeaway you guys should take away from here. Don't use your neck straps as neck straps. Use them as wrist straps, and only while playing. Otherwise, do not depend on them. They will only bring you pain and suffering.
That is very good advice.
All right, so I'm going to really quickly go over my painting process. I always start with the darkest layer, which is almost always black. Oh, so a thing about the sailboat one, by the way, that's a soprano C, and the person, hi Mark, the person wanted so much stuff on it, and when they ordered the ocarina, I was expecting it to be like a triple bass from everything that they wanted on there, and then they're like, a soprano C, and I did not think, that was probably one of my most challenging paintings that I've done. All right, hold on, I'm left-handed, so it's a little blur. Yes, ceramic tiles and neck straps are just, it just leads to sadness. Just don't depend on your neck strap. It's a little different when it's a pendant ocarina, because you know they're necklaces. But so yeah, I wouldn't say don't use them whenever it's a pendant necklace, but even then you can see that it can be a problem. All right. So I actually almost never use paintbrushes for my paintings ever. I suggest these natural sponges that you can get from any art store or clay store or anything like that. And I rip them up into different things to make them have interesting shapes. And then you just dab. Yes, happy little trees. This is where I say there are no accidents. And then you just, I pre-clean the ocarina with some alcohol. It doesn't have any kind of oils or finish on it. You can actually do this over certain finished ocarinas, ones that are, there's some, I'll link these in the resources as well, some of the really cheap ocarinas off of Ocarina Wind from Amazon, which actually aren't bad as far as sound. Those can be painted over pretty easily. There's the STL DIY, which actually also is a decent enough ocarina. And then the Aria from STL, the solid black one. If you have access to a kiln, that solid black finish comes right off. If you don't, you can paint right over it. It's great stuff. So I'm just heavily do it on the first. And you end up with, I suggest gloves once again. Gloves are good, but I only have one glove left. And while I'm talking, Mark had a question about raising the breath pressure, raising or lowering the breath pressure of an ocarina when it's already been made. Before you make them, I'm not actually sure what you do. I always ask Songwei to do that for me before it comes to me, and he never completely tunes it, but he gives it to me in a state where I can tell that it's going to have higher breath or lower breath. But if I think that it needs to raise or lower, the ICO ocarinas I find have really, really, really good subholes. And so I end up with a lot of room to work with the rest of the ocarina from the subhole. So I usually work from the subhole up. So if I want to raise or lower the pressure on the rest of the ocarina, I'll open or close the subholes. So like if I close everything, including the subholes, and I get a really good solid A, then I know that I can work with it really well. It doesn't work on all ocarinas. Basically, if it has really good subholes, or if it's like an ocarina with only one subhole and is really strong all the way up, then you can almost always raise or lower the pressure on those. And once again, you just you feel how the way you want to play it. You play it the way you want to play it, along with a tuner app. Any tuner app, any on a phone will work fine. And so just watch your tuner while you play each note the way you want to play it, and then you adjust from there. And this is actually almost dry already. This is why I love the Americana so much. It dries in minutes. Cures in days. You do want to let it cure once you've got the paint all done. Before you put the varnish on it, you want to let it cure for at least 24 hours. And then once you have the varnish on it, I recommend at least 3 coats. The more, the better. At about coat 2 or 3, I suggest using the finest grit sandpaper that you can find, like 320 is what I use. Sanding it down a little bit, smoothing it out, and then putting the rest of the varnish layers on it. And then you let that cure. I give it at least 2 days. At least. If I take my fingernail and I scrape it across it and it doesn't leave a mark, I know that it's cured enough. I'm very painted now. How much time do I have left? 15 minutes? I think I can get that. Does anybody have any other questions while I am? Yes, Robert, I know that, but I have found that in like more than 75% of cases, it ends up working out fine, especially with ICO or Nobles, or what's another one? The Foca-Link multi-chambers. Those people have sent to me to retune because I think that a lot of times somehow they end up with varnish down inside of them. So usually if it's like a matter of something like the Foca-Links, the varnish got down inside of them after they were tuned. And so it's just a matter of getting rid of the extra stuff in there. All right. And it's already ready for the next layer. Now for the next layer, the colorful layer, this is where you want to make the texture. So you'll find one with really good little textures in the sponge, and then you very, very lightly dab it. And then you dab it on your palette just to see what kind of pattern it's going to have. And you just...
Hey, Tina, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Okay. I had a good question from Tim. He wanted you to share your website so you could paint some ocarinas.
Okay.
And so we could get your info so you could do ocarina finishes for people.
Okay. I can definitely do that. That said, I very much encourage people to get themselves a cheap DIY, like the DIY STL or those ocarinas from Amazon, which I'll also link to, and just have a go at finishing it. It's really easy and really fun, and you can experiment. Like a lot of times the ocarina wind ocarinas, I say that they're decent enough they oftentimes have small, little tiny tuning issues, usually involving the subhole, I found. So those are really nice to just get and just mess with and see what you can do to make them sound better. I'm not suggesting you take your map around and try this, obviously. Now, this is just one layer, and it already looks really cool. And then that just needs to dry for just a couple of minutes. It's already almost done, other than the varnish layers, which can't be put on until tomorrow. This is actually different than the Americana. These are pretty cool. These are called Color Shift. They're done by Folk Art, which I usually don't like their paints. Their paints are usually gross and runny, but their Color Shift is really nice. And it flashes blue and green, and it's really, really neat. To Wesley, that just said that they're too clumsy to play anything other than a plastic ocarina. Plastic ocarinas are fine too. But if you just get one of them cheap ocarina wind ones and you break it, you can practice fixing them. I have so many broken ocarinas in my collection. One time I took an ocarina out of the kiln. After it was cooled down, I picked it up. I said, that's really nice. And then I threw it on the ground. Not on purpose. It just ended up on the ground. It's in my collection now. It sounds fine. Sorry. And then there's the back. Notice I got a little bit on the windway. I just kind of do that. And it's basically done. This is also a really nice precursor to ending up learning to make your own ocarinas, which I actually gave up on because Songwei can make them so fast I can't even stand it. Yeah, to me they kind of they remind me of Koroks. It's like a screaming leaf.
Someone asked if you've ever had to repair the same ocarina more than once.
No. So the one that I fixed of David's had been dropped multiple times, but I only fixed it once. So far, only once have I had to fix. So far, I've never had to fix an ocarina more than once. No. It almost got dropped again right after he got it back, but I think that's it. Unless anybody wants to sit here and watch paint dry for the next 5 minutes so I can put the gold layer on it.
All right. Well, everybody.
There is one. Sorry, there actually is one more thing. If you have an already glazed ocarina, there are a couple of things that you can do to decorate it. There are glass paints that you then just put in the oven, and it stays almost as good as regular glaze. And then so for example, this one, which you might notice kind of looks like the dragon tooth finish. I think it is the same thing. This is a luster that you can put on top of glaze. If you know what kind of glaze has gone over it. Sometimes you can actually ask the maker what kind of glaze and if it's luster compatible. And you can paint with lusters It's expensive, but it works really well.
Wow, how cool. Well, I never knew that glazed ocarina could be painted over. That's really interesting. Um, but please, on the chat, show Tina your thanks for coming to today's panel about ocarina repair, ocarina modding. I had fun. I learned a lot. Thank you very much, Tina. That was super cool to watch and to see firsthand how you do your work. Um, I'm really excited about the next session. Please be sure you join us right at 3. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, we have the awesome, amazing Jordan Moore at 3 p.m. And he's going to talk about how to practice effectively. So we'll be starting that shortly. Thank you so much for being at this session. Please stay in this call because this call is what we will use for his session. All right, thank you.
Thank you, guys. And I'm going to go mute, but I am still here.
Can everyone see and hear me?
Yes, sir, we can.
Wonderful. All right, so hello everyone. I'm really excited to be doing this panel. I'll just say that I graduated recently and I was a music major, so I've had a lot of teachers and I've learned a lot of varying perspectives and ideas about practicing effectively. And it's been really helpful for me actually putting together this panel and kind of synthesizing all of that knowledge into a concise little package. And so I just have some good ideas, I feel like, about practicing effectively, and I hope that they can be helpful to you as well. Now, to start off, we're going to try something maybe a little different than what you've done before. And by the way, you'll need a 12-hole ocarina in C, preferably. You could use a 10 or 11-hole 2. You might just have to modify some of the exercises that we're going to be doing. And you could also use a double or triple, but we're only going to be going up to F, so not really any reason to unless you really want to. So I want you to start by taking your ocarina and putting it in front of you. And I want you to look at your ocarina and ask yourself these questions. Why do I play ocarina? Why do I play music in general? And why am I practicing right now? And just think about that for a few seconds. If you're like me, you might not have super concrete answers, but I'm sure we all feel that we love playing ocarina, we love playing music, and it's probably something that's very fulfilling to us, fulfilling as either a hobby or just as a musician, something to do. And I think it's important to take time to kind of reflect on those values every once in a while, because it's easy to get in a negative mindset when you're practicing. It's easy to be hard on yourself. It's easy to compare yourself to other people. But I think it's really important to just focus on you, focus on what's going well, so that you don't get kind of bogged down by those negative thoughts. So for the rest of this session, I'm going to go ahead and send you a link to a Google Drive folder, which you should be able to open. I'm going to send that in the chat in just a second. And I'd like you to open the one that says how to practice. Oh, I just sent that to Nicholas. Hold on a second. All right, how to practice effectively. It's the notes, it says notes and links. So just take a second to open that up and I'll just get talking about some of the general tips that I have. So the first general tip, and by the way, after all the general tips, we're going to do some more hands-on stuff where I'm going to play some kind of exercises. I have a whole fundamentals routine drafted out. So I'm going to play some of those exercises and then I'm going to give you a chance to play them as well, just to take some time on your own to do that back and forth. Now, so we talked some about the mindset, about staying positive in your practice and focusing on what's improving. Another helpful thing in practice is to set goals and to set specific goals. It can be easy to just like go into a practice session and play whatever you want, and that can be good sometimes. I think it's good to be free sometimes, but having specific goals and even setting time limits in your practice, saying, okay, I'm going to spend this amount of time warming up, like 5 or 10 minutes, and then I'm going to spend exactly 15 minutes working on this, on these 8 measures, or on this whole piece. I'm going to spend this amount of time. If you know that you only have a certain amount of time to work on something, it'll kind of make you be more productive while you're working on it. That's something that my freshman roommate in college talked about. He was an organist, so he practiced like, I don't know, 8 hours a day or something crazy like that. But I think the time limits thing is really helpful, and I do that sometimes just to make myself more productive in my time. The next tip I have is to record yourself. In this age with technology, that's a really invaluable tool, not only in your original practice, but also if you're practicing with an ensemble. If any Oka Banda people are here, we should really record our rehearsals. I don't know why we haven't done that more in the past. But recording yourself, I find that when I record myself, even for like my YouTube videos, I'm recording stuff that I like practice and like I feel like I sound pretty good on. I still hear things like, oh, I didn't know I was quite doing that when I was playing. I didn't know that note was quite out of tune. I didn't know that rhythm was a little off. I still hear things like that. And it's just, why not use that tool if you're going to find things like that when you record yourself? And I mean, I know people who record like their whole practice sessions and listen back to it. That's like pretty extreme. I don't particularly feel like I have the time to do that. Maybe I could if I made the time. But practicing or recording like a run through at the end of your practice session and then just making time perhaps before the next practice session to listen to that and say, oh, this is something I can work on. Oh, that sounds pretty good, but I could work on this. That's a really important thing to do. So that's kind of the third tip I have there. Now, the next tip I have is to do a lot of listening. Listening to really good recordings, especially of music that you're working on, so that you can get a good sense of what it's supposed to sound like. And listening to ocarina recordings is important, of course, but we also have access to so many recordings of other instruments. And music is music. So if someone plays so musically on a violin, why not listen to that and take some ideas from that and figure out how to do them on an ocarina? So listening to great recordings to hear musicality and to hear just what a piece is supposed to sound like, what is the style of this piece, can be really helpful. I know that in my music education classes, we talked about this a lot. And no offense to elementary schoolers, but if they're only hearing each other play, how are they supposed to know what the instruments are like really supposed to sound like? How are they supposed to know what a really good sound, a really good tone is, and how are they supposed to like play in tune? They should be given, some sorts of listening assignments, or the teacher, if they're able to model on the instruments, should definitely do that so that they can hear what a good tone sounds like and things like that. Let me check the chat really quickly. Oh, good. Now, so other than listening to recordings, let's move on to the next tip. This is more in the lines of when you're actually physically practicing. So if you scroll down to the bottom of this notes and links document, if you have that up, the second link, the last link, you don't have to open it right now, but it's a study on classical pianists. They, I guess, got some pianists together and they gave them some Shostakovich to learn, and they gave them a specific amount of time. And they studied what techniques the pianists use to learn the music, and they studied which ones were most effective by like how many mistakes there were when the pianist performed at the end. And the number one, effective technique was to slow down when you're practicing. It's easy to like practice and be like, oh, I got to figure this out and just like try to play it at tempo the whole time. But if you don't slow down, even if you kind of get it under your fingers, chances are it won't be as clean sounding as if you had slowed it down. And then the other one is to isolate in your practice. And what I mean by that is if you have like an 8-measure phrase in a song and like 6 of the measures are really solid and there are 2 that are giving you a lot of trouble, you should, and this might sound a little obvious, you should not really play those other 6 measures and just focus on the 2 measures for a while until it's like you got it as good as the other measures. And it seems like an obvious thing, but it's easy to just like try to play things over and over again and hope that like the part that's bad gets better. But if you just spend all of your attention on the part that needs to get better, it'll get better faster. So those are like 2 big rules in practice that you should think about when you're physically practicing. And then the last kind of general tip that I wanted to share with you is taking breaks, of course. If you're structuring your practice and kind of planning out time limits, at least like loosely, you could practice for 25 minutes or so and then take a break for 5 minutes. And just, another thing that I wanted to mention was phones can be distracting in practice. I have my metronome on my phone, so I can only avoid it so much, but, save the phone for those 5-minute breaks and things like that. And yeah, Julian has a good point. Oh, slowing down on YouTube. That's a really good idea. That's also good if you're like figuring out songs by ear that are kind of fast and you need to like figure out what the notes are. I think that's what you're saying. Slowing it down can be helpful with that too. Now, those are all of the general tips I have. I think what I want to do is go into the fundamentals routine that I drafted up, and I'll take a lot more of the questions kind of towards the end, and we can do more discussion about these tips too. But let's just go ahead and do some of the hands-on stuff. So if you go into that Google Drive folder and pull up the Ocarina Fundamentals routine, you will see this routine that I've drafted up. And the first thing I have is what I call an ear tune. And that's picking a song and learning it by ear. It's not exactly, I wouldn't really consider it fundamentals. I usually think of more like of the physical stuff as the fundamentals, but learning music by ear is very invaluable. And it's something, I won't stay on my soapbox for too long, but something that's a little undervalued in traditional school teaching of music. A lot of the times, you'll get your instrument, you'll get your method book, and it'll say, okay, so for G, you put down these fingers. There's a whole note. You put down these fingers, you blow, and you count to 4. And that's how you play music. But that's not really music. That's a little bit more robotic. If you learn things by ear, you're training that mental instrument. And then you can put that together with the physical instrument. That's why I also think it's really important to sing in your practice so that you make sure that you're hearing the music as well as just playing it on ocarina. That's a really important thing to me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have us, you can learn like a new song by ear, and that's a good thing too. But another good thing you can do with the training your ear is picking a song that you know and learning how to play it in different keys and trying to like make that translation basically. So what I figured we could do is I'm going to play Twinkle Twinkle Little Star because that's, from my understanding, like the most known song in the world, the most recognized melody by countries all over the world. I figure most of us, if not all, probably know this melody, at least in our heads. And now let's figure out how to translate that to ocarina in at least one key. So we'll just start, I'll just play the beginning. So with the key thing, I know there are people out there, like Stephen Higbee, for example, he can probably do this. I'll just speed it up for the sake of time, but he can probably do and play it in all 12 keys like that easily. And that's great. And that's kind of what you want to get to eventually with your translating and playing in different keys. But if you're in a position where, okay, you're trying to figure this out by ear, okay, I've never played it in, say, E major before. I'm going to try that. Okay, so that's the first interval. Oh, no, that sounds minor. Wait a second. Oh, okay, no. And if you're making mistakes like that and then figuring out what the correct note is, that's wonderful. That's exactly what you want. You're training, you're hearing the music in your head and you're figuring out, okay, that's not exactly how it is in the ocarina. You're figuring out what the right notes are. And that's training your ear, and that's making the connection between the mental instrument, what you're hearing in your head, and then the physical instrument, which is the ocarina. So I want you to grab your ocarina, your 12-hole ocarina, or whatever ocarina you have with you, and I want you to try playing Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, perhaps in a key that you've never played it in. And just try that out for 30 seconds or so. If you get it done in one key, go ahead and try another one. All right, so that's something you can experiment with more. So with this ear training, so there's taking a song that you don't really know and you can listen to the recording. And like Jolene said, you could slow it down too if it's like a fast one and you're trying to figure out the notes. Listen to a recording and figure out how to play on your ocarina. And then, of course, there's the changing the keys, which we're trying now. So those are the two big things I like to do as little ear training exercises at the beginning of my practice. Now, let's move into some of the more physical aspects of fundamentals. When I talk about fundamentals, I mean things that you can practice that will make it so that when you see those different, say, intervals or those different arpeggios or those different scales in music, you'll have already practiced them in your fundamentals. So it'll be easier for you to play the music. You won't have to practice it as much. So let's start with the first one I have on there, which is drone scales for intonation practice. Practicing intonation is, of course, very important. On ocarinas, we have kind of both a blessing and a curse that the intonation is very flexible. And if you're not blowing the right amount of air, it won't really be in tune. And I'd say it's a lot more flexible than other wind instruments. So what I do is I use drones to practice my intonation. So I'd like to turn your attention to the go back to the handout that's the notes and the links for a second, and we're going to go to that first link. Here, I'll put it in here one more time just in case. So the notes and the links, go down to this first link, and that's Robert Hickman's website. And it's a page on there called Playing the Ocarina in Tune. And at the top, you'll see this drone tool. And if you're playing an alto C ocarina, it's already set to a good note for you to tune to. If you're playing a bass C, I would lower it to C3. If you're playing a soprano, it's C5, things like that. And you try and figure out which one's the root of your ocarina. But I'm just going to show you an example of how I would play a scale over a drone and practice my intonation. You want to do it very slowly, and you want to not move on until you're confident that the note's in tune. So I might purposely play a little even more out of tune so you can really hear it. And you do the whole range of the ocarina. So I wrote it going up to the high F and then all the way back down to the low A, just so that you hear out the whole range. It's not just a scale from the root note to the next root note, but trying to just do the whole range, because why not practice intonation in the whole range? So that's how I play a drone scale. You're welcome to try it in a different key if you want to, any key you want to really. Just go ahead, and if you're on the web page, if you're on a laptop, it'll probably be easier than mobile, but go ahead and try playing the drone on the website and just play drone scale for a little bit, maybe 30 seconds or so. All right, so hopefully you've had a little time to just start trying that out, and that's something I recommend doing really in your practice as much as you can. Now, a couple slightly more advanced things with the intonation. When playing with a sine wave like that, ocarina sounds a lot like a sine wave. It has that very pure tone. It's really easy. I find myself hearing undertones. So when I play, for example, the F over the C, I can actually hear like a lower F. That's there's some like big physics thing, but it's basically like your ear hears the F and the C, so the F I'm playing and the C is the drone, as overtones of a lower note, and then it makes you perceive the lower note, even though it's actually not there. I don't know a lot more about it, but it's some like really cool physics of sound thing. So that's one way I listen, like here, if I'm like really perfectly in tone, I listen to that lower note that appears. And another thing to note is this is more useful for like actual performance. When I'm playing this, so that E that I played was probably a pretty in tune E if I was looking at a tuner. I'm not right now, but it probably is. The major third, I should say, the major third of a scale or of a chord should be played a little bit lower than the actual pitch that a tuner tells you to be playing at. And that's what'll make it sound perfectly in tune. So So I actually started just a little bit too low there, but I got it to, I heard the undertone, like low C or something, and that sounded in tune to me. I think I got it pretty in tune there. That's an important thing that's actually good in ensemble performance. If you have the major third of a chord, you should try to think on the lower side. And one thing you might be wondering is, does that mean that pianos are like out of tune? I won't get too into this because I could go on about equal temperament and things like this for a while, but pianos are tuned to what is called equal temperament. Every note is the exact same amount away. But in early music and like the Baroque era, they used a lot of different temperaments where the third was lower, like what I was just playing, and also the major sixth would be lower, like what I was just playing. And equal temperament was kind of invented for these instruments so that they could play in all keys. There were actually organs, and there's still organs, for example, where they're in a certain temperament, so you can only play in certain keys where the third is lower. If you tried to play in like an opposite key, the third would be higher and it would sound like really awful. So that's just like an interesting thing about that. But that's kind of a more advanced intonation thing, lowering the major third when you have it in a chord. So that's good. That's some stuff about drones and intonation. Let's go back to the ocarina fundamentals routine. And we're going to go to number 3 now. We're on some scale exercises. I actually wrote this one out in all 12 keys, and I'm just going to show it to you in C because that's the drone that I have. But what I would do, I'm going to keep playing the drone because, I mean, yes, there's a scale exercise and you're working on your fingering and you want to eventually get it faster and faster so that you can play more technical things. But why not just listen to a drone so that you can keep listening and making sure that you're playing in tune too? You're getting like, more bang for your buck out of that, basically. So I'm also going to turn on my metronome, which I have here. So the drone and the metronome together. And here's how I'd play this. I'm playing it kind of fast right now, just for the sake of time, but especially in the harder keys, it'd be much slower. You just want it to be clean, and then you can bump up the tempo from there. And I'm holding out that last note until I feel like it's in tune. So that's a scale exercise. What I did was, I kind of changed it. So, obviously ocarina has a small range. I kind of changed the way the scale exercise goes. But the main concept is that you're doing different intervals. You're going up by a third, down by a second, up by a third, down by a second. So it's all thirds and seconds like that. Now, before you do that really quick, I want you to try that out. You don't have to do it with a drone and a metronome if you don't like have all the technology with you, but just try out some of the scale exercises. Actually, go ahead and do that, and I'm going to think about what Nancy's question is here for a second. So try one of the scale exercises, whatever key you want, and feel free to throw in the drone and the metronome if you're feeling so inclined. Okay, so hopefully you've had a chance to start playing through these a little bit. I want to talk about some of these questions really quickly. So first off, yes, you are welcome to download this fundamentals exercise that I made, and then you're also welcome to take my notes and use them however you want, the notes and the links. And I also have some sheet music in there. I don't technically own that. I kind of like, I guess I transcribed that. So I mean, yeah, you're welcome to use it to practice. Just don't go like selling it or anything. We'll get to that later. But yeah, so that's a scale exercise, and I think it's good to also work on your intonation. So play it over a drone, and you should do it in all 12 keys. And it gets really hard in some of the other keys. So I haven't practiced my scales a ton on ocarina. It's not technically my primary instrument. I've done it enough for the music that I play, but like G flat major, I'd probably struggle doing it at the tempo I tried the other one. It's harder for me, and I haven't quite gotten there yet. So work on the hard keys too. If you can play it easily in C major, maybe you don't do that one for a while until the hard ones get a little closer to that. And once you can play things in all 12 keys, then things will start to get like, it takes a long time to get there, but it'll make things easier in the long run if you really practice things in all of those keys. Now I want to get into, and Nancy's question before I forget. She was talking about octave displacement and melodies. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm thinking you're talking about when a melody doesn't fit the range of an ocarina, or at least like a single chambered ocarina. You can take notes. This is also true for some of my exercises. I didn't write them out in all the keys, but you can take the notes that wouldn't fit and play them down an octave or up an octave if it would be too low. Did that kind of answer what you were saying? And by the way, let's see. Yes, Robert and Christina posted that book. Yes, that's a good point. So helping people realize that. But yes, that book looks like a great thing, and I need to check that out too. Now, the next exercise I have in this fundamentals routine is a tonguing exercise. And this is something that I didn't do a lot because I learned how to double tongue a little earlier than maybe I should have. I was in like middle school, and I never really practiced trying to single tongue faster because I would just double tongue things that were too fast for me to tongue. But working on making your single tongue faster is a useful tool because often that can be even cleaner than trying to do double and triple tonguing. So what I would do, let me make sure I pick a tempo I can actually do. I wrote this one in a minor key because when you're doing exercises, it's good to get out of just playing everything in major. It's also good to get out of doing everything in 4/4, do other time signatures, but I didn't really do as much of that here. So I have it in C minor, and I'm just going to show you what this would sound like. I'd use a metronome and a drone again. And that's actually like close to the fastest I can comfortably single tongue. I had like a little not as clean part in there too. And so what you do is you just play that, and every once in a while I try to bump it up a couple clicks on the metronome and try to get it even faster. So if you have all of your stuff still up, go ahead and put on a drone or a metronome or both if you have all that technology up right now, and just try doing this tonguing exercise. See how fast you can single tongue, and see if you can start to push that from here on out. Take a minute or so to do that. Okay, good. So that's a single tonguing exercise. Now we're going to move on to some double and triple tonguing. And I'm going to explain how to do that. Those of you who either aren't familiar or just haven't really tried learning it. And sorry if I'm moving a little fast and not giving you quite enough time to finish the exercises, but you have these sheets, you can try them. I just want to make sure we get through everything too and have time for questions at the end. So double tonguing and triple tonguing. To learn double tonguing and triple tonguing, what I would do is in your daily life, go around and you're cooking dinner. If you remember about double tonguing and triple tonguing, just go digga 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 digga, or triple tonguing da digga da digga da digga da digga da. So double tonguing, you're alternating between. I like to think of it as D and G, like digga digga da, but a lot of people also say T and K. You kind of use both. If you're doing like more staccato or more like harsh articulations, you'll do. But if it's like smoother, you'll want to do more of a digga 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 da. I think the smoother one's actually a little harder, so I try to not harder, but harder to make it sound smooth when you're actually playing it on the ocarina. So I try to always think of it as the digga 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 da. So you're cooking dinner, digga 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 digga. You're taking a shower, digga digga digga. Going on a walk. You just like say that away from the instrument, digga 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 da. And you can say it like that, but you can also do it as an airstream kind of thing. That's actually more like what it's going to be on the ocarina. So that's a good thing to do. People think you're weird, obviously, but if you say that away from the instrument enough, eventually you'll get to the instrument and you'll have worked on it. It's kind of like a tongue twister, and eventually it'll be easier to do. So that's basically how I learned it. I just kind of kept doing that until I had it. And so let me just do the double tonguing example, and then I'll do the triple tonguing. Oh, really quickly before I do that though. Triple tonguing, there are technically two ways to do it. I do duh, duh, guh. This is also, I have a little mark under exercise number 5 with the double and the triple tongue. I have it written down with the syllables just so you can see them. Duh, duh, guh, duh, duh, guh. So D, D, G, D, D, G. But some people also do digga, da, digga, da, which I actually used to do, but I ended up liking this one a little bit more. It was easier for me. Da, digga, da, digga, da, or digga, da, digga, da. Yeah. I've heard people say it's good to actually be able to do both so that you can like match the other people you're playing with. But I think that's a little over the top. So that's a little bit about starting to learn double tonguing and triple tonguing. Let me just do this example. And, why not? I'll turn on my drone so I can make sure I'm playing in tune too. So that's double tongue. Really quickly, here's the triple tongue one. I need to slow it down a little, I think. Oh, actually, I need to slow it down a lot. Okay. That was even a little fast for me. I got a little caught up in the middle of it. But that's how I do these exercises. I'm just taking a scale pattern and I'm just playing 2 of each note for the double tonguing and 3 of each note for the triple tonguing. So that's a little exercise. Go ahead and take like a minute to try that out. You can either just try, if you're starting out double tonguing, try tonguing, usually tongue on a D or a T, like the t. Try doing a little bit of tonguing with the other one, with the K. It's, it's in the back of your mouth. The tongue's kind of hitting more in the back. And try, instead of starting your note on the ocarina with a T, try it with a K. And that's another way you get used to the different syllable. So wherever you are with double and triple tongue, you can try the exercise. You can try just producing notes with a K instead of a T. Just try a little bit of that. I think it's important to, at least get started on it. Good. So, at least just try that a little bit. With there's a question for triple tonguing. Yeah, it can be t-k-t, t-k-t, or t-t-k. And I guess if you're trying to like pick which one to learn, I would just do what's easiest to begin with, I think. If one is specifically easier for you to do than the other one, I think that's probably the one you'll have the most success with in the long run. That's just my idea with that. So yeah, double tonguing, triple tonguing, a little bit more of an advanced thing. But you know, if you want to play things really fast that are tongued, it's good to work on it. Before we go on to the last couple, I just also want to say, with this whole fundamentals routine thing, I'm not a huge advocate of spending like all your practice time on fundamentals. It's good to like build up all of these physical exercises and to be able to play in different keys and everything. But ultimately what we're doing is playing music. And this, I mean, these are exercises, they're not really music. And if you try to focus too much on this, I think you can get a little bit maybe overwhelmed, a little bit less motivated to practice if you're spending way too much time on this. So fundamentals, it's a good thing. I mean, there's a point for my primary instrument, you know, I was a music major, so I would spend 45 minutes a day doing fundamentals, but that's like, I would honestly rather, you know, nowadays I might do like 10 at the beginning of a practice session and then just like practice actual music. I think, you know, like with the whole ear training thing, it's all about playing actual music, not just playing the notes. So always make sure there's a sufficient amount of music. This seminar is a little bit balanced differently. There's a lot of fundamentals, but that's just because I want to go over this all with you. So number 6 on this document is vibrato. So I notated this a little bit weirdly, but basically this is how I would develop vibrato. There are different, you know, thoughts on this, but I consider it on ocarina to really just be you're pulsing your air. So if I started trying to do this, I would play this G. So I'm pulsing, I'm blowing more air, but it doesn't sound quite right because I'm starting with an in tune note and then I'm blowing more air. So it's just going from in tune to sharp to in tune to sharp. With vibrato, you're going both above and below the actual in tune part of the note. So this exercise, it's a little awkward. I actually find it easier with the faster notes, but this is what it would be like. A little fast. So I'm starting with quarter notes, eighth note triplets, and then 16th notes. And by the time you get to 16th notes, it's basically vibrato. I'd say that's like a pretty good vibrato speed. It's vibrato is like also kind of a personal thing. Some people just have vibrato at different speeds or prefer vibrato at different speeds, but that's about like, you know, a reasonable tempo for vibrato. Something like that. So that's how I get used to it. I start slowly and make sure that it's even, and then I speed that up some. So on your own, no need to do this with a drone because vibrato, you know, you're affecting the pitch. So it's gonna, with a drone like that, it might actually sound out of tune, even if it's in tune because you're going up and down like that. So just try vibrato a little bit if you've tried it before, or even if you haven't, just see if you can get a little bit of that shimmer on the note of the pulsing. Try it a little bit on your own. So Stefan asks a good question. For a 30-minute practice session, would you suggest 10 minutes of fundamentals and 20 minutes of practicing songs and other music? I think that would be fine if that works well for you. I think that's a decent ratio. I probably wouldn't do much more fundamentals than that. If you were doing like 2 practice sessions, then maybe you would do that. And then the second practice session would just be the music and like not really fundamentals. I don't really do fundamentals like more than once a day. But yeah, I would say do fundamentals as much as is like comfortable to you and as much like to be frank about it, fundamentals aren't exactly as fun as playing real music. And you don't want to just do it all the time because, again, you won't be too motivated to do it. Music is, what's motivating us. What's motivating us to play ocarina. So, do some fundamentals, do it enough so that you feel like you're improving, but focusing on music is a good thing too. A little vague answer, but it can be, it can be different from person to person. Good, okay. I'm gonna go on to this last thing I have in this fundamentals routine. There are other things you can practice too. I didn't write any like subhole specific exercises. I had some exercises that went down into the subhole range, but subholes can be a tricky thing. So if you come up with little exercises like and like working on your subhole speed on all those notes, that's a good thing to practice too. Now this last one is kind of an advanced technique and I like hardly ever use it, but it's a cool thing to experiment with. So ocarina is different than a lot of wind instruments in that on, a brass instrument, another woodwind instrument, you can usually play a note. And if you play a note with more air and like a firmer embouchure, usually more air, it will make the note louder. If you play a note and then play a note with more air on ocarina, it will be louder, but it will also be sharper. And practically a different note. So to create dynamics on a single note on ocarina, you do what's called shading. There's also a thing that recorder players do, I believe. And so here's the example that I have written there. And let me see, has anyone joined that needs the link to the Google Drive? If so, I'll put that in. And I'll just do it really quick just in case. But so shading, here's the example. I'm gonna start on a G, and then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use this finger. You could technically use any finger that's on a hole, but I'm going to let some air out of the hole, just a little bit. And actually, let me explain this in a different way. If I take a G, I blow less air and then I blow more air. Here's what it sounds like. The pitch goes down, then it goes up. It gets quieter, but the pitch changes. Now, if I take a G and I slide a finger off and then slide it back, here's what it does. The pitch goes up. Now what I do is I combine those things. I roll the finger off and I blow less air at the same time so that, the pitch would go down and the pitch would go up. So now the pitch just stays the same. I did a diminuendo and then I crescendo back up to the note. I use this sometimes at the end of phrases. So if I finish a phrase, and then I like diminuendo off of the note, that can be a useful thing. It can also be useful to crescendo a little bit in a phrase. So if I'm doing like, or if I'm, at the end of the phrase, and I'm going up to highest C. I was trying to play Princess Mononoke, that didn't work. But you can crescendo a little bit and add like motion to your phrase. I use this like very sparingly, but it's a fun thing to experiment with. So I'd say, go ahead and try it. You can pick a note and you'll just roll your finger off and blow less air and try to keep the pitch the same. Just try that a little bit. And you probably try that a little bit. And then one more thing about it. I have this phrase, I'm actually playing this tomorrow, but it does this thing where it repeats a motive. It goes, and then it repeats it. And usually people play it the second time a lot quieter, like an echo. So what I'll do, I play it normally, and then I let a little bit of air out with my pinky here. I go. It sounds a little, I did a little too much there. It was too quiet for me to play it in tune. But that's a little like weird echo effect. So you can make dynamics that way too. And it's just really hard to do in tune. So I wouldn't do it too much. But if you practice it a lot, I would need to practice it more to use it more. That's that kind of thing. Good, okay, so that's a whole fundamentals routine. We spent a good amount of time on that. Now I want to show you an example of me practicing some music that I haven't really practiced before. So if you go into the Google Drive folder, I linked it again just a little bit higher if you don't have it. I want you to open up Il Vento by Giampiero Lucchini. I want you to open up the G flat major version. Don't worry, you don't have to play this, but that's what I'm going to play because I already know how to play it in the original key. If I showed you me practicing that, I wouldn't have a lot left to practice just because I've performed it before. So let me pull that up as well. So Il Vento, I opened up the wrong version, G flat major. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to practice these first, I guess, 5 measures, that whole 16th note run. I'm going to practice it for just a couple minutes, and I'm going to kind of explain what I'm doing. So there's a little bit of practicing actual music, something pretty difficult. So here I go. So I need to figure out what fingerings I'm going to do for this too. So I don't really want to do this E flat to this G flat because that's like an awkward cross fingering. I'll probably use the alternate E flat like this. So that's how I start. I don't think I'm going to want to go from G flat to F like this. We have a lot of that in here. So what I'll do is I'll find an alternate fingering for the F. That one's a little flat. I was trying to cover this and the subhole here. I like that one. So we have. Okay, so I figured out my fingering to the first measure. Let's try playing through it a little more. Playing a little better than I thought it would, but so again, the A flat to the G, I don't really want the cross fingering, so I'm going to use the same alternate. Actually, I'm going to put down my pinky, and that's going to lower the A flat to a G. Okay, so I've kind of played through it once. I see, okay, so the first measure, it just kind of repeats that thing over and over again. I kind of have that at this point. The first ending, I was not so good on. I want to make sure I get that. So we have, okay, there it is. What's hard for me is the part at the end. So I'm repeating it. That's an awkward key to play in. So I'm repeating that. Another technique I'll do, so I was isolating that, making sure I play that a lot. But another technique I'll do is change up the rhythms. There's a really common thing to do. It's great. So you do what's called swing and then anti-swing. So here's swing. And you play it like that, and then you'd also do the opposite. That was a little more awkward for me. But what you're doing is essentially making it harder. So when you go back to the regular straight rhythm, it's going to be a little bit easier. Another one I do is 3 16th triplets and then an 8th note. So it's da-da-ga-da, 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 da-da-ga-da. I take the group of 4 notes and I transform it to that. And then the opposite, da 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 da. And I'm making it harder. So those are some techniques I'll do practicing this. Let me start going through it again, see what I've improved a little bit. So that transition from measure 2 to measure 3 is kind of messing me up. Get that interval. Okay, so I'm practicing that a little bit. So I'm isolating the parts that are giving me more trouble. And as you can see, I've already made a pretty significant improvement from when I first started it. And I haven't played it in this key before. It's not really at tempo. The original sounds more like this in the original key. And I've played that before, so I can play that. But to get it good in this key, I would need to do a lot more practice. And that was just some of the things I was doing. So I was isolating the parts that I really needed to work on and not playing the stuff I could already play for the most part. I was trying to. And I slowed it down. I didn't just try to like play through it fast and have it be messy. I tried to slow it down to where it was usually pretty clean. And then the changing up the rhythms is especially helpful when it's something that's all the same note value, like a bunch of 16 notes, a bunch of eighth notes, and changing up the rhythm so that I make it more difficult, or at least just different, and then bringing it back to the normal rhythm. Now, for you all, well, let's see. We're close to the end. I was gonna let you try a little bit of this on your own, but maybe I'll let you, since you have this Il Vento sheet music in here. G major is that original key. So if you wanted to try that a little bit, the original key, I'd recommend that unless you've already played it in the original key. But maybe we should just use these last 10 minutes for any questions or any other ideas you all have about effective practice. Anything you might want to add to what I've said? Just any other questions?
I have a few questions from the question and answer panel. I'm sorry for interrupting.
Oh, no, wonderful. Go ahead.
Okay, I'll go ahead and ask the first one, saying, for advanced studying, do you have any exercises for extended technique?
Good question. For extended techniques, I mean, I would consider double tongue and triple tongue kind of. I showed you one exercise. Another thing you'd want to do with double and triple tonguing is, so that was practicing. All the notes were grouped in two, so it actually makes it a little bit easier. But if you want to get good at double tonguing, fast and changing notes, like playing stuff like that, you can do more scale exercises. I rely a lot on scale, so. And just come up with whatever, you can come up with that's within a scale and kind of has that sequence, but it uses the double tonguing, and you can speed it up so that you can eventually double tongue it. A triple tonguing one I do is. So I'm practicing the triple tonguing and changing notes rather than just 3 of the same note. So that's that. With shading, I consider that an extended technique. I don't have a lot to practice that other than what I did. I would just try to find spots in music where you actually think it can help create the musical phrase and try to practice it in there. With other extended techniques, I mean, there's flutter tonguing. I don't really have a lot to practice that. I just kind of, one thing that's hard is doing flutter tonguing and tonguing the note. I find that when I flutter tongue, I like air attack. I go, but it's also important to be able to go, so sometimes I practice that a little bit, actually just going, being able to tongue a note and start the flutter tongue right away, so it has that good attack. It's a little thing that I do. Let me know if there were any like other specific extended techniques you were asking about, though.
There's he also writes the specific extended technique that they were interested in as well was the extended range of the 12 hole.
Okay. Do you mean the like that?
I think that's what he means.
Okay. So I'm not a huge expert on this. You might actually want to talk to Stephen Higby and Milt, if you can talk to Milt too, because they're like really good at this. But the trick is like getting a way to switch from the normal notes to this other technique smoothly. And I'm not great at that yet, but what I would do is, I mean, it has to do with how you're using your fingers on top. I can't get in tune, but sometimes I feel
also
tempted
asks how to
like,
get back to the position.
Yes. Okay. Sometimes it's easier when it's F because you don't actually have to put down any fingers. I would say message Stephen about it, because actually I don't have a super good answer for that. I need to work on that too. That's a really good question.
There's another question as well. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, you're good. Yeah, I was gonna say, what are the questions?
We have 2 more questions in the question and answer. One of them says, it's good to practice vibrato like that, or is it better to wait it naturally? Or wait to learn it naturally, sorry.
No, that's a good question. I would say there are a lot of different views on this. I, for me, I would say I learned it naturally. I kind of started to develop an air vibrato when I was playing euphonium in like middle school, and my private teacher had to stop me and be like, "How are you doing vibrato?" Because you don't actually usually do air vibrato on brass instruments, but it kind of came to me naturally. I would say it's okay to like try it out and see if you can start to like get it with the pulsing of the air. But I would say try to make sure it feels natural. Try to make sure it's not like you're playing a note and you're like you feel like you're like intentionally pulsing the air. Eventually you'll be able to feel it more in the music, and if you're really relaxed, if you're in good posture, it'll start to develop more naturally. And David Ramos knows a lot about that too. He has a good video on it.
Okay. As well, there's one last question. It says, with these alternate fingerings, have you noticed that the pitch of them varies between ocarinas due to chamber shape? And they also go on to say, also physical shape has an impact on the technique, which do or don't work for ergonomic reasons.
So for the alternate fingerings, yes, definitely. Some of those alternate fingerings would not have worked on a soprano C or would not have worked as well on a bass C ocarina. So the range often changes what alternate fingerings you need to use. I basically just have to experiment when I'm going to use alternate fingerings. Like that was just a really good place to use alternate fingerings. I normally don't use that many, but yeah, I tend to experiment. I mean, the beauty of ocarina is that you can change the pitch with any finger. With other woodwind instruments, you can't necessarily do that. So there are a lot of options with alternate fingerings. So yeah, I just test it out and I try to figure out which ones are most in tune on a specific ocarina or range of ocarinas.
And there
And
was one last
then,
question I
oh
didn't
yeah,
see.
mhm.
Um, this one is a great one to end on, actually, because it says, how do you track your goals and your progress? And do you have a format or application that you do that with?
Yeah, that is a great one. With tracking your goals, my number one recommendation would be having a practice journal, actually. Something you can do is plan out, if you're planning out your practice a little bit, like I said, like planning out how long you're going to spend on certain things and what you're going to work on. Doing that in a practice journal is great. You can plan it out beforehand. You can kind of check things off and you can decide how much time you'll spend on things. With exercises like what we were doing, I recommend keeping track of the tempos. So you could write that in a practice journal. Say I did this scale exercise in F major and I could do it this fast. Next time I'm going to try to bump it up a couple clicks and work on things that way. So practice journal is a great thing. I used one a decent amount in college, not as much anymore, but I need to get back into it when I'm doing more practicing. So yeah, that's my recommendation there.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Jordan. I personally learned a lot in this session. Please, if you're in the chat, show your love and appreciation for Jordan Moore for his amazing panel. He just did an amazing job, and I really hope you guys enjoyed as much as I did, because I certainly learned a lot and learned a lot of new techniques. I'm so excited to try them out the next time I practice. Thank you, Jordan.
Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Alrighty then, guys. We'll be back in about 3 minutes with our Silverwind Ocarina panel, with Ocabanda panel, where we'll talk about how to start an ocarina band, an ocarina septet. So please stay on the Zoom chat, take a break, go get some water, stay hydrated. We'll see you soon in just a bit. Thanks, Jordan. All right. Um, we're getting set up right now for our next panel. Very, very excited. If I missed any Silverwind Ocarina members or any Akabanda members, please send me a message so I can give you the panelists. We're going to go ahead and get started. Let me go ahead and start my video. Hello, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and mute a few people right now. That way you can hear everybody. But I'm Nicholas. Hi. I'll be helping kind of facilitate this panel like I've been facilitating all the panels. We have members from Silverwind Ocarina and from Akabanda. If you have not heard of Akabanda, they're the first US Ocarina septet since the 1940s, as is my understanding. And they have really great music, really great songs out there. If you haven't checked them out, they definitely are on YouTube. We'll start with introductions first, so that's why I'm unmuting everybody. So if you hear a little bit of noise, just hang on for a moment. If you have a tool to be able to unmute yourself, go ahead and unmute yourself. And I'll pass the host around so you can turn on your camera. It's my understanding like you can't turn on your camera unless you're the host. If that's not correct, tell me. But I'm gonna go ahead and start with, I think they're all here, the ones that are gonna be here. I'm gonna go ahead and start with David, if that's okay. And I'm gonna let him kind of introduce himself. And yeah, here he is. I'm gonna give you host, David.
Hello. This is very strange with the how do you approve the cameras. Hi everybody. Thank you all for being here. Really excited to be discussing this because this is a topic that's been really near and dear to my heart for the last 7 to 9 years. Really thankful for my bandmates being here. A couple of them aren't going to be able to make it, some have to leave early, but yeah, we're really just excited to share our experience. So most of you know me, but I have a YouTube channel. I've been making Ocarina videos for going on 13 years now, or going on 14 years now, actually. Wow. And I started Akabanda 2 years ago, I think, with
3 years ago.
some of the, oh my gosh, 3 years ago. Oh yeah, because it's July. 3 years ago. And I'm gonna let all my bandmates introduce themselves to you as well.
Hi, I'm Andy.
Go next.
Are we doing video or just voice?
You can do video now.
Okay. Hi, I'm Andy. I just graduated from San Jose State University and with a degree in marketing with minors in music and Japanese, and I've been playing the ocarina for around 10 years.
Sorry, I'm doing a lot of reclaiming hosts. So I'm going to pass it to Ella now.
Test, test. Are you able to hear me? Yes.
I don't see you as a host, though. Hang on. I think something happened. Okay, I think Ella is not in the Zoom meeting anymore. I think her Zoom might have crashed. But let me go ahead and pass it to Jordan Moore for just a moment, too.
Let's see. Am I the host? Oh, not yet. Oh, there we go. All right. Hello. Yeah, so you just heard from me. I recently graduated with a degree in music performance, euphonium performance, and music education from the Eastman School of Music. And I also have a YouTube channel. I post a lot of ocarina videos, a lot of brass videos, and some like wind ensemble stuff. and I play a lot of classical music, anime music, and video game music. And I've been playing ocarina for about 10 years now.
All right. I'm gonna get Ella to be a host. It's gonna take me just a second because I gotta like bump her up 2 levels. So hang on just a moment. While I do that, I'm gonna reclaim. All right, there we go. I think for some reason, every time I give her host, her Zoom crashes, which is unfortunate because it happened again. Let me see.
Maybe can she talk without being host?
That'll be okay. I'm sorry about that. All right, we'll do that in just a bit. I don't know where she went. Okay, no problem. So while we're waiting on that, I'll do introductions for Silverwind. Let me go ahead and just start my video.
You're muted.
Thank you, Andy. You guys know me. I'm Ocarina Owl on YouTube. I'm also Nicholas Miranda. I teach ocarina, and I've been teaching ocarina as a teacher, as a music teacher, for about 6 years. I teach mostly elementary students, and it's been super fun. Recently, this year, Emily and I decided to start the second U.S. Ocarina septet since the 1940s, I believe, right? And it's called Silverwind Ocarina, which we're really excited about. An interesting fact about us is that we haven't actually met in person. So that's been kind of challenging because our first concert was supposed to happen, but due to COVID-19, it got canceled. So we weren't able to meet in person for our performance, and we've been having to do a lot of virtual performances. So we now have a lot more experience with virtual performances than we do with actual performances, which is very, very interesting. I'm going to check real quick to see if Ella's back on, and I'm going to just promote her to panelists and let her introduce herself real quick. That way we can get all the Akabanda members introduced. You should be good, Ella.
I don't know if it's going to work, but hi, I'm
You're good.
a B player in Okabanda, and it's nice to see you all.
Alrighty, thank you, Ella. I'm gonna go ahead and now that all the Akabanda members are introduced, I'm also gonna do some of the introductions for Silverwind, and then we'll delve right into our topics as soon as we're done with intros. Sorry guys, I know there's a lot of hosts in this one, so this panel just has a lot of different things. Be patient for just a little longer, and then we'll be done with intros. Our next introduction is gonna be Tina, so I'm gonna go ahead and unmute her. Here you go, Tina.
Whoops. Hi, can everybody hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yay. Okay. Here, let me see. I cannot stop videos. That's fine. I'm Tina Hardison. I've been playing the ocarina for a really long time. I think more than 10 years at this point. I decided last year to join up with Silverwind Ocarina after we talked about it at the last festival, and here we are. I also work for Imperial City Ocarina as their refinisher. I have delved in ocarina making, but don't really make very often. And I think that's it.
Okay, thank you, Tina. We're gonna go on to Emily.
Hi, can y'all hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Excellent. Hi, everyone. My name is Emily Wiggins. I've been playing Ocarina for almost 10 years now. I'm the Soprano C in Silverwand Ocarina. And yeah, thanks for coming to the festival.
All right, thank you, Emily. Let's hear from Josh next.
Same as the last two. Do you guys hear me all right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, great. I won't bother with the video, but hello everyone, my name is Josh. I live in Huntsville, Alabama. A little fresher on the musical potatoes. I've only been playing for about 2 years. I was at the last Ocarina Festival in Seattle last year, and Nick kindly asked me after the fact to join him in his Silverwind ensemble, which I said, sounds great. Here I am.
Thank you, Josh. All right, and lastly, we're going to hear from Violet.
Hello. I play the bass G in Silverwind Ocarina. I also only have about 2 years of experience, but I do come from a musical background. I grew up playing piano and clarinet.
All right. Well, so we have a few
Steven
questions.
is here, Nicholas.
Oh,
Can
he is?
Steven
I'm so
introduce
sorry.
himself?
All right. I didn't see him in the guest list. Thank you for pointing that to my attention. Is there anybody else I'm missing? Okay. I went ahead and promoted Steven, and yeah, you should be able to unmute yourself now.
Hey, there we go.
Hey, Steven.
Hey. Yeah. Okay, you can hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Do I just introduce myself, I guess? Just say.
Yes, please.
Yes.
All right. Sorry. So I'm Steven. I play Soprano C in Ocarina, and I don't know what else to say, so I'm just gonna leave it at that.
Okay. All right. Well, there's a few questions, that I've seen Akabanda get asked over and over again, and there's also a few questions that I had for them when I first started my ensemble. So we're gonna go ahead and start the session with just kind of asking them these questions and seeing what answers they have. Like I said, y'all are welcome to kind of talk it through. It's we're just trying to get other people some pointers as to like how they can start their Ocarina septet, what they can do. So the first question I had was how to form an Ocarina ensemble. Like, how has that process happened? So I'm going to mute myself and let Akabanda answer that question.
I'll go ahead and start this one off because it took me like a year or two before I found the right people. So the benefit of the age that we're living in is the internet. And fortunately, when I was traveling around a lot for my work with Songbird Ocarina, I met a lot of people who were very capable and talented Ocarina players. That's how I met Andy. That's how I met Tad and
Caitlin.
Caitlin as well. Yes. Each one of them are amazing stories, and I just kind of put them in a Rolodex in my head, like, okay, that person's really good, that person's really good, and then we also had people posting online, like Ella, and then we just had a random contest with Steven, where we were missing. We needed someone to come in and fill our 7th spot, and so I just kind of put a word out that we needed a bass player, and Steven was one of the people who applied. So a variety of different methods of how I found the right people. So the first thing that I would recommend is looking in your local community, because that's been the hardest thing for me, and I'm sure for Nicholas, and as well as arranging practice sessions. You cannot beat being in person and meeting each other on a regular basis. What Okabanda's had to do for the last 3 or 4 events that we've done is arrive 2 to 3 days before each performance, and then just grind and not sleep a lot, and just practice for days. And it works, but I wouldn't recommend it. So if you can find friends, or if you can find people in your local community who are interested, that would be the best way to do it. And then after that, just do a nationwide search like Nicholas and I ended up doing. The other thing that I would recommend, which is what I'm really grateful that I found this book, was to read this book by my friend Claudio Cedroni. It's called The Ocarina Septet, and unfortunately it's out of print, but if you have an iOS device, you can get it on iBooks. So it's really great for iPad, and it's got so much history about how the septet was developed and the purpose of each part, and that taught me a lot about where to fit people in the septet. And then just also one minor fix especially for Nicholas. So we are technically the first Ocarina septet in the US. This was the last ensemble, the Sweet Potato Tutors, from the from the 1930s. And I think this CD is very hard to find, but if anybody wants these recorders, they're amazing arrangements, and I have them on a cloud. So just shoot me an email or something, and I will send it to you.
Wait, so you said the 1930s, not the 1940s?
They were playing into the 1940s, but they started in the 1930s.
Wow, amazing to know. Thank you, David.
Yeah. Okay, I'm done.
All right. Well, that was awesome. Our second question that we have on this panel was, what are our roles? What are the roles that each one of y'all play in your septet?
All right, I'll start for this one for Okabanda. So all of us bring various different strengths beyond just our capabilities of playing the ocarina. For example, David, given his long history as a creator and large influence in this whole community, he sort of is the glue that holds us all together in terms of his network, and the logistics we can manage through that. And then just going off of that, like Tad, who is not here, he has a lot of experience in conducting, so he runs our rehearsals and sets our tempo for our performances. So he's really helpful in that regard. And Jordan arranges most of our music, not all. And I'll let everyone else go over their individual roles for after this, but I run a lot of the logistics. I MC for the group because I'm really comfortable talking in front of people, and I handle a bit of the stuff on the business side of the group, as that I have more of a background in business comparatively.
One thing I'd like to add is something that Okabanda and I believe Silver Wind Ocarina are both starting to do very recently is record remotely and put videos together from all different locations. And in that case, it's also helpful to have people who can audio edit and video edit. So we have a few people, especially I know me, David, and Steven, I think do the most audio editing. And I think Andy and probably Caitlin even have some video editing experience too, in addition to me, David, and Steven. So having people to cover those roles is important as well if you're going to try to record remotely with your ensemble.
And just a quick heads up, I gotta go in 5 minutes.
You're muted,
You're
Nicholas.
muted, Nicholas.
Nicholas, you're muted again.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. So the next question was, how do we rehearse and what music do we play? So where does our repertoire come from?
I mean, we're nerds, so we mostly play anime and video game, but we started incorporating some classical repertoire, which was important for, half of our group are classically trained. I think most of us are classically trained, so we have experience in that realm, and I think it's important for the history of the Ocarina Septet. So while I like doing the anime and video game stuff, because in the West, especially in the United States, that's what attracts people to the Ocarina. I would really like to continue growing our classical repertoire specifically for the history. I missed your question. What was it?
It was I think you answered it actually.
Okay.
You were we were asking, where does your repertoire come from? What kind of music do you play, and how do
The
you?
answer is Jordan. Jordan. Most of the music comes from Jordan.
Jordan does everything.
And
That's funny.
So to provide a counterpoint to David's answer about the importance of adding the classical repertoire, so the reason we have such an emphasis on video game and anime music is from a practical business-ish standpoint. No matter how impressive a classical piece we play, no matter how technically advanced or technically impressive a classical piece we play, the majority of people who look up ocarina music, who come to ocarina concerts, at least in the West, they're coming to, outside of like Italy, they're coming to see the songs that they grew up hearing on the ocarina. So, or songs that they have close associations tangentially to the ocarina. Like, for example, we don't have any songs from The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time in our main repertoire, but we have a lot of video game music. So people will come with the mindset that they're expecting video games, anime, that type of idea. And we fulfill that need by having a focus on that. But of course, we do want to expand to have more of a classical focus in our everything.
if I could also share a very quick horrifying experience I had regarding classical music, or at least the classical community. I don't currently do a lot of conventions for Songbird anymore, but during the time where I was assisting them, we did a convention for the National Flute Association, which is a very well-respected group in the classical community. And every year they have this traveling convention where they invite the biggest names in the flute community to come and do panels, to do performances, and then also to sell in a convention hall. And we had so much trouble selling at this convention because of how the flute community and the classical community at large views the ocarina. And it was the worst experience I've ever had trying to talk to people about the ocarina because of their preconceptions. And so I think it's important for us who take the ocarina seriously to, not that it's necessarily our responsibility because we can play what we want, but I think it's helpful for the ocarina brand if we play things that people consider more serious.
Yeah, it's all a balancing act of what people expect and want to hear, and the image we want to present the ocarina in.
Yes.
Wow, that's very insightful. Thank you for sharing. Our next question is, what challenges have you guys overcome as an ocarina septet for those people that are thinking about starting their own and already have some people that they're really interested in asking?
I'll start.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I'm just gonna open this up for Steve and Jordan and Ella. So here.
Oh yeah.
More.
Just the main thing is the lack of ocarina players in local areas and things like that. It's hard to find people who you can rehearse with easily. And I actually have to go now, so have fun. Bye.
Thanks, Andy.
Bye,
Andy. Thanks for being here.
I'll be back after my call.
All right. Any other challenges before we move on to the final question for Ocarina?
Well, at least I think the really hard part, which can be kind of discouraging at first, is like when you try to play together as an ensemble for the first time and you realize how hard it is to tune to an ensemble in terms of its tuning. I know at the start of it, I think Jordan put together a couple of Bach chorales, and we really just rehearsed that over and over again. Even though we could technically, quote unquote, play it, it's getting all the chords in tune and stuff that can be really challenging and discouraging at first when you're starting an ensemble, in my opinion.
There really is power behind warming up together.
Warming up together, playing just in tune, doing just long tones, drones, and all that stuff together. That stuff just really helps build that chemistry and get over that first hurdle of being able to not just play together, but play in tune, your articulation spot on, all that stuff. Yeah, all that fancy stuff.
And I just saw Angela ask a question, and then Ella, I'll let you answer the next answer. Yes, I think having ocarinas from the same brand is very important, or at least testing them out together so that you can hear the texture differences and whether or not any of them are overpowering. We gravitated towards Claudio Colombo because not only were his ocarinas affordable, but they're also very well tuned, and the texture, they're all well balanced together. So if you can try to get the same brand or at least the same type of texture, it's very helpful. Go ahead, Ella.
I want to emphasize the importance of what David just said as well, because we have gone through at least 3 or so AGs for me personally. Mine ending with the sound until we finally just shelled out the money for Claudio Colombo.
If I may add to that, at least when I'm playing Soprano C, there are often times where I use a different ocarina for a different song, just because one Soprano C might just be too dang powerful. Like if we're playing a really nice slow melodic piece, and I'm playing those high notes on the Claudio Colombo, and it's just screaming high, it's just sometimes I just need something a little bit softer. So I normally switch between a Roder and a Claudio Colombo when I'm playing with the ensemble. Preferably the Claudio Colombo, just because it blends a little bit better, in my opinion.
Yeah, having all the same ocarinas from the same maker, it really helps out because the maker basically tuned all the ocarinas to play with one another. They're basically built for it.
Wow. Well, thank you. Thank you very much for sharing that. That's very helpful about the ocarina brands. And also, I love Steven's answer about being able to play in tune. That was super cool. Last question that I have for Akabanda is, and this is more of a broader question. So thinking of like the main theme of like, kind of like what Jordan mentioned at the beginning of his panel, like, why do we play the ocarina? So this question was asked, why do we play as an ocarina ensemble?
I kind of shared my thoughts at the beginning, so if anybody else wants to share.
For me personally, it's the power of friendship. It's because you know how ocarina is kind of obscure in this world, and not a lot of people know about it. So most of us can share the sentiment that we have played ocarina alone a lot of the time. For me, ocarina was a reawakening into musicality for me, because before I was just kind of sick of classical competitions and whatnot. And I always just wanted to play music, and not really for competition at all, but that was something that my school focused on. With ocarina, I was able to just play what my soul felt. And eventually, I just felt kind of lonely and wanted to play with other people. And so when I was approached with this whole Okabanda idea, I was absolutely thrilled. And every time we met up, I would cry when we had to leave, because everybody just became a new family for me. Like, not only were they my friends, but they were family, and they were just an experience.
I really love that answer.
And going off of what Ella said, in a similar way, I started an ocarina ensemble at my college. A bunch of musicians, but I taught them how to play ocarina as a secondary instrument. And college as a music major can be kind of stressful, because you have to practice, you have to get ready for this lesson, this rehearsal, all this stuff. But for us to have something that we didn't have to do, that we were just playing this instrument completely for ourselves and for fun, was a really nice thing to just do every weekend, and just play music for music's sake.
That's really cool to know. Thank you, Jordan. All right. Well, I guess if you have any further questions for Akabanda, feel free to leave them in the question and answer session. I know we have a few already. We have 3 for y'all that we'll be asking y'all at the end. We're going to go ahead and start with Silverwind Ocarina, and I think David has the questions. Is that right?
I do, yes. So similarly, how was your experience in starting your ocarina ensemble?
So that's really interesting to talk about from our perspective, because I especially want to reach out to anybody really thinking about starting their ocarina septet or any ocarina ensemble. It doesn't have to always be a septet. You can play in a duet. I mean, I know Yoko has a great group called the Northwest Pacific Ensemble that plays ocarina, and they do an awesome job. So I wanted to go with a septet because I know that that's the tradition from Boudreaux. At the same time, like I said, I faced the same challenges that Steven and a lot of people were talking about not being able to find ocarinas in your area that you, David, mentioned. But one great place to look is actually the US Ocarina Festival, which is such a good place to like find your people that you not just vibe with, but you're also like really respect them as musicians, and like they bring different and unique roles to the table. So that's personally my experience. The way we came together was feeling inspired by not just Akabanda's performance, but also the concept of an ocarina septet. So I don't know if anybody else wanted to add to that, but that's my experience when kind of co-hosting this septet with Emily. Yeah,
May I jump in?
yeah, absolutely.
Okay. I'm not calling anybody out. Let me just say that first. Nicholas and I were talking for a little bit before the ensemble got started, and we were talking about names and who we'd like to ask and everything like that. So it could be as simple as reaching out to an ocarina friend and saying, hey, I had this idea. Who do you know?
Exactly. And I really like that answer because like you won't ever know until you ask, and it's really a lot of fun to put together. I will say, like I said, coming from our perspective, it's a bit different because of what I mentioned, the fact that we haven't met in person yet. We were scheduled to meet, but we haven't. So our perspective is a little bit different on this, but definitely we've been working together and just collaborating and spending a lot of time doing the long recording sessions and things like that. So yeah, I guess that would be our answer. Yeah.
Cool. What is everybody's roles in the group besides playing?
Right now, I think Nicholas does just about everything except for the playing. I think that Violet has done a little bit of arranging, but I think Nicholas has mostly done that. And the rest of us just are here to play right now.
I would have to disagree with you, Tina. I actually think each one of y'all do like very important things in our ensemble. One thing I'm really not very good at, and I'm really glad that I have this person in our septet because this person is so good at something that I'm terrible at. I'm not that great at social media. I'm really bad at promoting different accounts. I'm bad at like posting, creating beautiful images, making nice things. So it's really nice that, Violet is able to kind of push some of our social media out into the world and just like able to create these like really beautiful looking images. Just also being able to organize all the music being in the same place, because as an arranger for me, like papers are just everywhere. And whenever I'm arranging, because I'm fairly new to ocarina arranging, I'd say I'd have maybe around less than a year, but definitely more than 6 months of experience with ocarina arranging. It's definitely an art, and I appreciate it for everything that it is. But some of the arrangements that we've been able to come up with have just been really nice. Some of them have been more challenging than I'd like them to be. So I'd had to learn a lot about like what's playable versus like what's not playable. And I'd say for the roles, since we haven't met, ocarina repair is like a really important thing. So usually Tina is able to help us, recommend like different tone colors with like different ocarinas that really just help a lot. And even though I'm hosting the festival, I want everybody to know I'm more of an introvert. I'm not really like a to the forefront person. So I would say that our Andy in Silverwind Ocarina is Julio, who can't be here. He's the one person that would probably be answering all these questions. And it's actually interesting. My experience for him was what David mentioned, which was looking for local musicians. And I was able to find him through, a university Facebook page where I found out that he's been playing ocarina for more than 10 years. So that was really, really amazing to know. And if I wish you guys could meet him. He couldn't be available today, but Julio is awesome. So I totally agree with you on that one, Emily. Anybody wanted to add anything?
I guess not. The next question was about rehearsing, but you mentioned that you guys hadn't met in person yet. So how have you
Yeah.
been coordinating on the video front? And talk a little bit about the music you guys play.
Yeah. Okay. So that's interesting. And I'd love for anybody else to chime in before I say the like long spiel that I have to say, because I know that like I probably talk a lot. So if
I can
anybody
say
wants to
that
say anything,
I can say that it's been very, very, very challenging trying to get us all on the same page sometimes.
yeah, absolutely. I agree with Yatina.
Could meet in
So
person, it would be just so much better.
it really would. So it's really interesting because one of the most impactful things about making a virtual performance, and that's mainly what I'm going to talk about, is because I don't have the experience of leading a rehearsal in person yet. But one of the most impactful things is making sure you do like pyramid editing. So what I mean is you start with some sort of track that everybody can keep a pace with. It could be a click track, it could be some sort of like MIDI or something like that. I'd like to use click tracks just because it's easier for everybody to keep in time, but we combine a little bit of the two. And sometimes it's challenging when a song takes rubato or they have a little bit more time. And sometimes you have to turn off the click manually to kind of like allow those moments to happen. In a recording, that's hard to do. In live, that's so much easier. So with that being said, like you build the pyramid, every person submits their recording, they put it on a Google Drive, and the editor tries to just sync every single one of them painstakingly for hours, which is fun and interesting, but also kind of tedious. Um, as far as the music that we play, how would you guys describe our music?
I feel like we have a huge variety of music in our list. We've only uploaded what this weekend would be the second one as a group, but we have the Dolls, Barrels, and arrangement. We have a Legend of Zelda melody. We have various like anime pieces. So it's from what we have in our backlog to play as a group, we have a huge variety of music that we like to play, though a lot of it is coming from the nerdy community.
Yeah. I get really excited whenever I get to play OSTs from animes or anime openings. Those are pretty fun to arrange and kind of like get that started. So, um, arranging has also been like a difficult journey because some of us have been also delving into arranging and just trying our best to like just get our toes dipped into that. So we've been doing a lot more arranging than we used to, and that's also been a great thing for us to do online as well.
Cool. You've already mentioned a couple challenges, but any others that you guys missed that you've had to overcome?
Yeah, I think for me the biggest challenge has just been just the whole editing process. It's taken a really long time, and just like the whole amount of time that it takes everybody to practice and just coordinating that, because it takes everybody some time to like practice their part, learn it, sync it. Like sometimes they play it at like, like a little bit slower than it's supposed to, or a little bit faster than it's supposed to, and just getting it exactly right is a challenge for me, I would say. Anybody else have any other challenges?
I actually have something to say if y'all don't mind. Um, I don't know if I can call this a challenge, but it's something that I had to deal with was trying to make the deadline so we have enough time to edit the recordings. That's always a little bit challenging. Like Nicholas said, if you don't practice effectively and use the time you have before a certain day comes, you're going to be in trouble. So
Yeah.
that is something that I had to kind of get over.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why Jordan's panel was super helpful to me, because I love like the way you break down practicing efficiently. And like one quote that really sticks out was somebody said in the chat, if you practice fundamentals for 10 minutes, you're saving yourself an hour of repertoire time. You know what I mean? And I thought that quote just like kind of stuck with me throughout the day. So I hope somebody finds that quote helpful too.
Cool. And last question, why does everyone play in the ensemble?
Oh, I just read that you wanted to keep that one for last. I'm sorry. I should have kept it for last. Um, yeah. So if Akavanda wants to chime in on this one too, I know Ella gave a great answer. I really don't think I could give a better answer than Ella. Uh, I'll try. I mean, I'll give what I can give. Um, I really appreciate traditions. I think there's something powerful in the multi-generational ness of the ocarina, which I know Fabio mentioned earlier in his session about the history of the ocarina. I think there's a lot of impact and a lot of power in being able to respect a tradition that just unites people and brings people together. I guess as cliche as it sounds, you know, like just like Ella was mentioning, music can bring people together, not just the listeners, but also the performers. And I would say that that's my answer. I don't know if anybody wants to chime in. I ask and invite anybody on Akabanda, on Silverwind to chime in and just kind of share your thoughts on that.
I hope this doesn't sound flippant, but my answer to that would be, why aren't you in an ocarina ensemble? Like, why don't you start one? You know what I mean? Like, I mean, what do you got to lose? You're gonna play with people who are, you know, gonna be your friends. Like Ella was saying, gonna end up being your family, and it's a way for you to grow musically. So why not?
Like,
I love that.
I deeply agree with Emily there. Like, here in Oregon, I actually attend a lot of conventions because nerd and all. And I actually started a panel called Learn to Play Ocarina, where I just teach random panel attendees and convention goers how to play it on these really cheap but playable ocarinas. And in doing this, I realized this is a lot of work. So I started recruiting people that I found at conventions that would approach me with either an ocarina or to ask me what I was playing. And some of these people became another ocarina family to me as well. And so after recruiting them, some of them I would have do performances to open up my panels and whatnot. And I don't think any of them were actually classically trained in music, but that's completely fine because like they just enjoy ocarina and they are ocarinas. So we just play together as much as possible, even though they can't read sheet or they have to rely on tabs or they have to rely on us teaching each other. But that whole experience brought us so much closer together and we end up having so much fun because of it. Back home here, I am kind of known for causing a lot of noisy disruptions at these events. A couple years ago, my friends and I from the panel actually started a march through the building, which is a total fire hazard, but we had a lot of fun doing it. We would just play our ocarinas doing the Bremen March from Majora's Mask. And so many people would join us, more people would get interested in the ocarina, and our family just grew. All these people who just came from different walks of life, who just happened to love nerdy things together, became another family to me. And you really have nothing to lose to start in starting an ensemble. Like, sure, mine here in Oregon doesn't always play in tune, but we play together and we're having fun and we're inspiring people.
Well, thank you guys. I appreciate everybody's answer. Did anybody else have anything they wanted to add before I moved on to the question and answer?
Just to tack on to Ella's last comment, I think never underestimate the power of inspiring others, because in having events like that, you are showing them what the ocarina is capable of. Even if it's the same, if there's like two altos, I wouldn't recommend two sopranos, but having two altos or having a bass and an alto, like I loved seeing Fabio play with his daughter today because they were able to play complete pieces with just two ocarinas. And if you can do a duet or a trio, that's just as amazing as being able to have something like a septet. But you can find those people by playing in public and teaching others to play.
Wow, what's wrong with two sopranos, David?
I enjoy having my hearing, Stephen.
Oh my goodness, that's awesome. Well, okay, so That was such a great note to end on. Thank you guys. I loved it. There was so much joy and positivity and all that. I learned a lot just from listening to Akabanda and their experience. So I hope that was something everybody also valued and appreciated. Before we log off, we have a few questions on the Q&A. Now, I'll be honest, guys, I have not been reading the chat. I've really been focusing on trying to get these questions and just moderating. So if you had a question in the chat and it didn't get answered, please put it in the Q&A. Really would appreciate it. First one is from somebody who says, each one of the band plays the same ocarina, or do we sometimes switch roles from the instruments we play?
For Okabanda, and I got this from the tradition of the Italian ensembles, is that each member plays a specific ocarina for their entire duration of their involvement with the group. I've seen in the Italian groups that sometimes they do actually switch ocarinas depending on the arrangement. And we've actually done that a couple times with Okabanda as well. But for the most part, as far as I know, I'm always going to be soprano G, Steven's always going to be soprano C, Jordan is our rock, so he's always going to be contrabass. We have discussed possibly switching some people, which you might have to do in the beginning. If some people just find that certain parts are more or less difficult than others, I think it's okay to switch it out. But the benefit of not switching is that that person becomes accustomed to that ocarina and the purpose of that part in each piece, if that makes sense.
If I can make a comment about just like part placement with people, one thing you also have to consider when placing people in different parts is kind of just playing to their strengths. So if you have someone's really expressive, have them on alto C or soprano C, depending on what your arrangements are, because they're going to have a melody a lot of the time, and that'll really help kind of make the melody shine a little bit. If you have people who are really good with syncopation, or will practice their parts, if they're a really hard worker and they're good with syncopation, put them in those middle parts, because some of those syncopations that we have in some of our arrangements, they're pretty brutal. Not gonna lie, I'm reading some of their parts, and normally I can sight read stuff pretty decently, but I'm looking, I'm okay, what are those notes again? What's the syncopation there? It's just and if you have someone who's just rock solid with their intonation, like Jordan, calling out Jordan, because Jordan's just, his intonation's rock solid. He really just keeps our tuning down as a whole. It's just, you kind of have to just play to their strengths and find the chemistry that works best for the group, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'll say that traditionally each part had a specific purpose in the septet. I'm reading this from the book, actually. So the top two voices, soprano C and soprano G, were usually the people, and sometimes alto C, would carry the melody. The lower two parts, the contrabass and then bass G, would usually carry the bass line, and then the inner voices would switch on the accompaniment or the canto. So they would be like the ba, ba, so they would switch with that part. But Jordan likes to mess with that, and he sometimes switches the melodies in the bottom, or he puts the syncopation in the top, which I like. Yeah. but yeah, I agree totally. Let everyone play to their strengths.
Fun. Well, so I think we should also probably go over the voicings too, right? Because I don't know if everybody here is familiar with what type of ocarinas are played in a septet, right? So I'm just gonna kind of go down the list. So it's soprano C, soprano G, alto C, alto G. Below that is bass C, bass G, and contrabass C. So if anybody's interested in for instance, I own a lot of ocarinas. So if you already own a lot of those ocarinas and you're interested in starting your ocarina band, I mean, that's even more of a reason to try to see if you could ask a few friends to get together and try some ocarinas out and see what happens. So we do have another question. It's a question, but hang on, let me read it. Okay, so considerations or tips from Akabanda for arranging.
just keep on doing it over and over again. Just keep on getting their practice. Like, I know that sounds kind of cliche, but like the more you do it, the more you're gonna be able to get better at that. And also, one thing I really like to do is I like listening to other people's arrangements. Like when it comes to my own arranging, I can't tell you how many times I've stolen from David or Jordan. I've stolen like their ideas. I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. What if I do that in this arrangement? And I like to incorporate that into my arrangements.
If you can study arrangements, I would highly recommend that. I think on
Mhm.
Giorgio Pacchioni's site, he has some old septet arrangements, but also Fabio also pointed out that Emiliano Berganozzi has some for sale on Amazon. They're kind of pricey. They're like $23 per book. But I'm gonna probably grab a couple of them and then just study them and see what he does, because Emiliano is a genius with the septet arranging.
Can you would
I-
you type that in the comments?
Yes.
I have a couple quick tips too. Ocarinas all sound pretty much the same. So if you have parts that are overlapping a lot, it'll be hard to tell which is which. It'll be hard to view them as separately. So try to make sure that if you want the melody to be heard, it's in a different range than the harmony, which is in a different range than the bass line, things like that. It's often useful to make bass parts and inner parts more rhythmic, especially if you're arranging something that the original is led by like a drum set. You need to compensate for that lack of rhythm, the lack of percussion. That's one thing to think about. A little advanced is, low notes on ocarina sound quieter than high notes. So if you want the overall dynamic to be loud, you want it to be climactic, have all of the ocarinas as much as you can playing in their upper range, and vice versa if you want the overall dynamic of a section to be quieter. And lastly, if the melody doesn't fit in the range of one ocarina, just split it between two ocarinas as you would like on a multi-chamber. That's something that you can do, especially if your ocarinas are all of the same brand. It'll still kind of blend nicely together and sound like one melody.
Cool. That's a
If I-
great tip.
oh, sorry. I was just
ahead.
saying, but not too long ago, I did a collaboration with Jordan on a tune from Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, and he did that exact same thing where he split the melody between the soprano G and the soprano C. And I'm like, okay, that might be a little bit weird, but like when I listen to it, I'm like, wow, that literally just sounds like one ocarina. It's just like, and it's just a lot of his arrangements, like you always think like, oh, okay, it's lower, it's gonna have a much like warmer sound. No, like the ocarinas just blend really well because they just sound completely similar. Study Jordan's arrangements, they're really good.
Mhm.
Yeah, I have done that a few times, to be honest with you. One last question that we have, and this is for everybody, I think. Do you have any tips on arranging songs for different amounts of players? Not just 7, but 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. I think Jordan and Steven talked a little bit about that too. But if anybody else does, I guess one tip that I have, because I worked a little bit with Jordan on this actually. I got a chance to kind of like just sit down with him and ask him for a few tips on a one-on-one. And I was able to get some really interesting kind of like information. And just as like my small amount of experience getting started for me was exactly what Steven said, just doing it as much as possible, practicing it, studying it, like David said, looking at arrangements that have been successful, seeing what worked, what maybe didn't, and like just understanding how the parts work together. It's almost like every ocarina in the septet has a personality. You have like the bright sopranos that just have a bright, colorful tone, and then you have like the very mellow basses, and they have like just rock solid bottom intonation, beautiful like blend when you put certain voices together. Sometimes like I get really surprised at how really beautiful you could blend like a bass and a soprano. And you, in your mind, I guess in my mind, that wouldn't be something that would sound like super like melodious, but when you combine it, it sounds so beautiful. So, I mean, just starting and considering what instruments you have, seeing what sounds you can play around with, and seeing how you can get the creativity in the music to show through your arrangement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, playing around is huge, especially so I just recently, well, coming out sooner or later once I actually video edit it, I did an arrangement for I think it was 12 ocarinas and then some synthesizers and stuff like that. That'll come out soon. But the big thing for me is don't be afraid to leave space and not write like constant notes everywhere. There's a lot of times, especially when we're arranging, especially when we're starting, where we want like, okay, everyone needs to be playing, everyone needs to have a cool part, everyone needs to do this and this, but you know, you have the melody, you have the harmonies, you have the accompaniment. You just gotta sometimes just lay back a little bit.
Yeah.
And let your players breathe. I think that's important.
Yeah, breathing is good.
Yes, absolutely. Well, guys, show Akabanda and Silverwind Ocarina in the chat that you appreciate them for taking the time to come and join this huge panel of 10 people. Thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you, Akabanda. Thank you, David, Steven, everyone. Thank you, Silverwind. Thank you guys for being here. Really appreciate y'all. Please be sure that you stay for our next panel. It's going to be awesome. I can't wait. I've been looking forward to it all day. Emily's going to be presenting a lot about how anime and video game music relates to the ocarina, and kind of like a part 2 to last year's session. So I'm very excited to see her presentation. We'll be right back in just a moment so that I can kind of rearrange the co-hosts and everything. Thank you guys one more time. Appreciate y'all a lot. Thank you.
Thank you.
right, everybody, I think we're almost ready. Wait just a little bit longer.
Hi, can everyone hear me? The camera's a little bit high. I'm going to adjust that. Not much can do with it, okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Ocarinas and Anime and Video Games panel. My name is Emily Wiggins. If you were here in the last session, you kind of know a little bit about me. I play Soprano C in the Silverwind Ocarina Ensemble. I've been playing Ocarina for almost 10 years now, so I have a little bit of background with it. And this is going to kind of be the fun panel where we get to talk about ocarinas and anime and video games. So if I get through my list and there are other anime or video games that you know about that I might have missed, please let me know. I'd be delighted to discuss it with you. So we'll get started. So the first, I'm going to do anime first and then video games as two separate topics. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to stop me. I have my eye on chat, so it's no problem there. Okay, so we're going to start with anime.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt up, but if you'd like, I know nobody's been using it, but there's a raise your hand feature, and since you know your panel has a lot to deal with like anime and a lot of people might be interested in it, you can actually call on anyone that has their hand up, and you can have them unmute their audio if you want them to.
Okay, that sounds good to me. Let's see, how do I call on people?
Let me test it. I'll raise my hand. Let me see.
Okay, thank you. Oh, so I just click ask to unmute, I think.
There we go. And so now I can say something. Does that make sense? All right, so if anyone wants to try that, you're very welcome to.
Okay, this is gonna be touch and go, but that's all good. Oh, okay, we got 2 hands raised. Okay. Charles, you have something to say?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. What do you think about the ocarina and just what do you think of some of the ocarinas and like in video game music?
I'm sorry?
Ocarinas and video game music. What's your take on that?
Oh, well, I was actually going to get to that. One of the main points of the presentation is that whenever ocarinas are presented in anime or video games, they often have a magical or supernatural type of role where the player gets extra abilities they didn't have beforehand. So I think that kind of answers your question.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Charles. Barbara, did you have a question?
Yes, I have a 13-year-old teenager who is, well, of course it's a teenager, that's redundant, who is totally hooked on video games to the exclusion of not taking good care of her schoolwork. And she's kind of impaired educationally, but I believe that she's musically gifted. And I would love to hook her on the combination of the ocarina her musical talents that she has. I'd like some suggestions if you have any. And maybe I'm out of line asking you that question. That's one of my questions. The second part of my question is, could somebody recommend a beginner ocarina for her? Thank you.
Oh, sure, absolutely. Okay, so as far as maybe I should clarify a little bit. Are you looking for music for her to play?
I'd like a recommendation for an ocarina to buy for her to get her hooked.
Oh,
Ocarina
okay, I see what you're saying.
because it's ceramic.
I could try to give you a personal recommendation. I know Nicholas covered a little bit in his presentation earlier today. There are 3 good ones if you're starting a beginner for a plastic ocarina. We have the Night by Noble. You can also get one from STL Ocarina. You can order online, which is St. Louis Ocarina here in the States. Or you can also get a plastic Alto C Ocarina from Songbird Ocarina, which is also here in the States. I believe they're based in California. So I hope that might help you out a little bit. But yeah, as far as anime that features ocarinas, I have a little list I put together. If y'all don't mind me running through it, I have some images to show you of the different characters in the different movies and anime and video games that play the ocarina. The first one I bet y'all are familiar with is called My Neighbor Totoro. I have a picture of it if I can maybe share my screen here. Hang on one second. So you can see here, I hope you guys can see it all right. It's a little animated GIF of 2 of the main characters blowing into what looks like a little ceramic instrument, which we would know as the ocarina. And I didn't notice this until I saw Fabio Galliani's presentation this morning. But if you see the little hole on the end, that was on the ocarina that he showed today, the little goose whistle. I think it was a whistle, but he was moving his finger back and forth to change the pitch. I never noticed that, but that's the first one I thought of when I'm talking about ocarinas in anime. So we'll leave that one there. Okay. And then the next ocarina in anime that I came across was Captain Harlock. It's an older anime that I believe was back in either the 70s or the 80s. If you're not familiar with the anime, I actually watched a little bit of it the other day for research purposes. But let me show you a picture. Maybe that'll help to communicate a little bit more. Hang on one second. Okay. Where is it at? There we go. So this one, you can see the young lady on the right there. Her name is, I think her English name was May or Mayu maybe in Japanese. She is playing a little ocarina there. And there's a theme she plays that's particularly beautiful. If you're not familiar with the anime, I would encourage you to watch it. Just to hear the music is great. But she is one of the major characters and she plays the ocarina. This is a little bit older, but I always like Captain Harlock and I'm glad to be able to share it with y'all. So check it out if you never watched it. It's great. Okay, let's see what else we have. I bet most of you are familiar with Dragon Ball Z. There's a character, I know Ella knows this one if she's still in chat. Not calling you out, sorry. But there is a character called Tapion, who is from Dragon Ball Z. And I will show you a picture of him. Let me see if I can do this. So there he is. And it always interested me in the finger hole placement is that they all go in a curving line instead of being separated into the 2 for the 2 different hands, but he apparently doesn't care. He can still play it. And Tapion's theme is one that I used to know. I need to relearn it, but it's a good exercise if you want to play chromatically, I think, on your instrument. Like it requires a couple of, oh wait, I got a notification. Never mind. And he is in Dragon Ball Z and he's a great character. If you've never seen DBZ, it's a great anime. I know that there's an ocarina maker who actually makes his ocarina that looks like that, a replica. So maybe look into that if you really love Dragon Ball Z. All right. And now we have, if we're going to continue with mainstream anime for a little bit, and then I'll do the more obscure ones, we have My Hero Academia, which I know Nicholas is nuts about. Oh, you're welcome, Barbara. One Piece is really good too. I wish they had an ocarina in One Piece. That would be cool. But in MHA and My Hero Academia, there actually is an ocarina. A friend sent me this capture, so I know it was in season 4, but I don't know exactly which episode, so you might have to watch it to find it. But let me show you what he sent me here. Where is it? Here we go. So if you look really closely, here the image is circled, but he is playing an ocarina. I don't know if this might be in an opening scene or something. I'm not really sure, but there you have it. He's clearly holding an instrument and his fingers are moving, and you can see the mouthpiece and the finger holes sort of. So there's that. But I always thought that was interesting. I've seen a little bit of My Hero Academia, but I still need to watch most of it. So I know that's kind of taking away my geek card, but there you go. So that one's in My Hero Academia. And I think we have a bunch of people who want to say something. Let me see here. Maybe not. Okay. Let's see what else we have. The next one I have down on my list is from Naruto. Most of you are probably familiar with Naruto, so I would call that mainstream. In the second to last arc, I believe it's episode 213, Menma is a character who uses the ocarina. Let me show you a picture. Let's see. So here it's rather small. Like I'm saying, I hope you guys can see this okay. But this is a picture of the character playing the ocarina. Again, you can see the finger holes, the mouthpiece, and everything. So I believe that was episode 213. It's the second to last arc, and it's before Naruto trains with Jiraiya. So if that helps you nail the general idea down with the story, where in the story it happens. So there's that. Okay. And then I think someone mentioned in chat, there is a one in Bleach. AM mentioned it actually, where Rengiku buys a pendant ocarina. I do have a picture of that somewhere. Let me see if I can find it. Where are you? There it is. Never mind, there it is not. I thought I had a picture of it, but I don't. But it is in a Bleach filler episode, as was said. So there's that one. The next one that I bet most of you are familiar with, the one that I love, is Pokemon. Pokemon 2000. Of course, STL has made the replica of this one from, I believe her name was Melody, if I'm not mistaken, where she plays the ocarina. So there she is. And then once again, you see her fingers, and she has the little, I don't want to call it a tuning slide, but some sort of device there on the side, which she turns, I think, to alter the pitch. So there's that one. And then there I have a few, oh, well, I have one more mainstream. That was Fairy Tail. And, sorry, I got distracted for a second. There is a character, I hope I'm saying this correctly, named Ophiuchus, or Ophiuchus, who is the 13th spirit in the, Nicholas explained this to me the other day, but he has a weaponized ocarina. Ophiuchus. Okay, thank you, Jess. I appreciate that. And see, you all already know about this. I'm just helping you all along here, but he has a weaponized ocarina in episodes 212 through 217. He has 2 different types of sound magic, which are weaponized. It's the Dance of Death, which allows him to control anything in his line of sight while he's playing the ocarina. Imagine if we could do that, right? And then they have the Punishment of Death, where he shoots powerful beams of light and it's used against Natsu. So I think I might have a picture of that. Let me see if I can find it. There we go. This is actually a screen cap from the wiki. So it's a little bit of information there, but you can see it just says it's a purple instrument with several holes used to play like a whistle. When the user plays the instrument, the sound of it can manipulate the body and movements of a person who's within the user's view through sound magic. However, the extent of such control is limited. The user can also manipulate wind, earth, and fire, and is capable of firing powerful energy beams, projectiles, and generating shockwaves from the ocarina while playing it. So, I mean, I need to watch this episode also. I always love Fairy Tail, but I haven't gotten that far yet. But that's another example of ocarinas in mainstream anime. And then the last few titles I have are a little bit more obscure. And there is one that I thought was particularly interesting. It's called Yamata Takeru from 1994. They actually sold, and I don't have a picture of it, I don't think. There is a little toy that Bandai sold that looked like an ocarina. I think they call it the windpipe or something like that. But it was used in the anime to destroy evil presences, and is also used the main character's friend will be able to pilot a giant robot when this ocarina was played, which is like, whoa, that's super cool. But you can see how it ties back to the main idea where ocarinas allow some kind of magical or supernatural abilities. So I thought that one was particularly interesting, excuse me. And then some other ones we have, I've never seen it, but there's one called Sakura's Quest or Sakura's Quest, depending on how you say that. And I do have a picture of that one. I thought it was just something I needed to look into. I couldn't find it on Crunchyroll, so that kind of limited me watching it. But we have, where is it? There we go. So this is a picture of the character playing an ocarina in Sakura's Quest. I don't know much else about it. Like I said, I couldn't, it's Funimation, obviously. You see the watermark there, but I wasn't able to watch it or find much else about it, but I know there's an ocarina in it, so there's that. And then we have, let's see, there's one called Susue no Gargantua. I think it's the Japanese name. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. But let me show you a picture. This one I just found out about yesterday, believe it or not. And this is a picture from the manga. So I will share that with you all. So if you can kind of see right there in the top panel, it's a little, what is that, like an 8-hole ocarina. And I can't read the text, unfortunately, but you can see that it's very clearly some type of vessel flute. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Okay. And then the last one I would like to talk about, I believe it's the last one from the anime, is called The Eighth Sun. I have not seen this one. I just found out he plays like a 10-hole. Okay. But the last one I like to talk about is called The Eighth Sun. I have not watched this one. I found, like I said, I found out about it yesterday. And I have a picture of it. Let's see. So here you can see this guy is holding this ocarina out to this person. And if I understand this correctly, y'all can certainly correct me in chat. That one actually has a sub-hole on it. I didn't notice that until just now. It's an 11-hole ocarina maybe. But this one has some kind of evil associated with it. Not too sure. But yeah, that's the ocarina in The Eighth Sun. So that's what I found for anime. I don't think I missed anything in my notes. Is there any anime that I missed that y'all know about maybe? Please let me know in chat. He looks kind of evil, yeah, exactly. Oh, Charles, okay, hang on one second, man.
Okay. Yeah, I can
Yeah,
hear
go
you.
ahead.
What about the game Jade Cocoon: The Legend of the Tamamayu? In that game for the PS1, the main character also had an ocarina as well.
Okay, in video games, all right.
Yes, did you know that?
I've heard of Jane Cocoon. I know it was really popular when I was younger, but I never got to play it. So no, I actually didn't know about that one. Thank you for sharing.
No problem.
Yeah, man. Okay. Did anyone else have anything they wanted to share with anime side of things? Jess, what's up? did you raise your hand? No? Okay. I don't
Hey,
mean to call you out.
uh,
Yes.
I just wanted to say real quick. I'm sorry, Emily. Um, I think a lot of people in the comments. I don't know if you mentioned it. I might have missed it, but a lot of people in the comments were asking if there was one in Bleach.
I said Bleach, yeah.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I missed it. I
It's okay.
apologize.
No, it's all right. I just didn't have a picture of it.
I've been like really enjoying the panel, by the way. I just want to say, like, every single time you mention it, I'm like, yeah. So I'm overly
Thanks, man. I
enthusiastic,
appreciate it.
especially about the My Hero Academia. Can't believe I missed that. Apparently, Tina saw it. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry. I'll cut out now. Thank you.
Okay, you're good. No problem, Jess. Don't worry about it. Okay, so we're gonna move on to video games. If everybody's cool with that. The first one, I know this is something that everybody in the room knows about, but we're just gonna cover it, okay? Let me see. And you guys already know what I'm gonna say, but I'm gonna do it anyway. What did I do with it? Here we go. Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. Everybody knows about it. Not much else to say there. This was probably for a lot of us, was the introduction to the Ocarina. I know that's mostly true in my case, so it had to be said. There it is. There's also the Ocarina, not Ocarina of Time, but can't talk. Majora's Mask. So let's see. I have a screen cap of that one in case anyone would like to see that. There we go. That's the inverted Song of Time. I think he's in Clock Town playing that. So yeah, there's that one. In which the Ocarina, if somebody isn't familiar with the game for some reason, of course, Ocarina of Time, he uses it to time travel 7 years into the future, or it just warps him around different places. So that ties back to our theme with magical or supernatural abilities being granted to the player. So there's that. Aw, Jolene didn't get to finish it. Oh, it's such a good game though. Let's see who else. What else we have here? I have Link's Awakening is another Legend of Zelda title that features an ocarina. What did I do with it? There it is. So you can see here, it's just, I had this game. I haven't really played it yet on my Switch, but it's so cute. I love the art style. And you see her singing, and he's just kind of doing his thing with the ocarina. Maybe trying to get that high F out, and he just nailed it. You see how happy he is on his face. So there's that. Okay. I'm smiling at chat, by the way. Other than that, we have the next game would be Lunar Silver Star Story. Silver Star Story. I said it correctly that time. I messed it up when I was practicing, but I said it correctly. If you're not familiar with this game, it was, I believe, it was on PlayStation when I played it when I was a kid. And I watched my siblings play it, my 3 brothers. Try saying it 5 times fast. Yes, exactly. Yes, it's such a good game. If you're not familiar with it, the music is gorgeous. The OST is so great. And as far as the function of the ocarina in the game, I don't remember too much. I know that the main character, Alex, played ocarina. That was his thing. I actually have a picture to show you also. And I can talk about it a little bit more from the picture once I find it. Where is it? There it is. I'm sorry, y'all. I'm trying to get through this the best I can. So this is also taken from the wiki. Alex plays the ocarina, and I'll just read it to you. It just says, basic info, Alex's ocarina is an instrument and an important item found in both games. During the Silver Star and its remakes, Alex carries it with him and plays it for his own enjoyment. But this is the cool part, I thought, in the Silver Star and its remakes. Using the ocarina in the menu allowed the player to listen to all the tracks available in the game. In the original Sega CD version, his instrument was a harp, and in Lunar Silver Star Harmony, using it in the menu only plays a new track available only in Silver Star Harmony. So it essentially allowed you to listen to the OST in-game, if I'm understanding this correctly. But I just thought that was super neat. I never knew that when I played the game as a kid, so I learned something new today. besides, everything else that I've been talking about. Let's see. We also have one game that I used to own for my 3DS. Is called Crafting Mama. I unfortunately don't have a screen cap of it, but you could basically have a lump of clay and use the stylus on the touch screen to form the clay and to, pick out the finger holes and all of that. And it was really interesting. I got it for like $10 at Best Buy. I managed to find it. And I came across the Ocarina mini game and I was just like, oh, this is a thing. That's awesome. So there was that. Crafting Mama for DS, also compatible on 3DS. The next franchise is really popular is Professor Layton. There were 2 games that featured the Ocarina. The English version for the first game is called Professor Layton and the Last Spectre. The Japanese version was called Professor Layton and the Spectre's Flute. And then there was a second game that was called Professor Layton and the Miracle Mask. So I have pictures to show from both. This first one I'll show will be from Professor Layton and the Last Spectre, I believe it is. No, this is Miracle Mask, excuse me. I got my games crossed for just a second there. So this is, if you're not familiar with Did You Know Gaming, they have a YouTube channel. It's actually very interesting. They just share information about games that maybe most people don't know about. But apparently in the Professor Layton and the Miracle Mask, there's a shop with a mini game where you can unlock instruments. There are found 3 ocarinas one that invokes feelings of rage and power, another that blows away worry, granting those who hear it courage, and one that enchants and opens the mind, instilling a sense of mental clarity and wisdom, referencing the Triforce of power, courage, and wisdom from the Legend of Zelda games. So that's a throwback to Zelda, but there you go. I never knew that until I would start looking up information for this panel, so I thought that was pretty cool. And that's from didyouknowgaming.com. That was pretty interesting. And then as for the other image for the other Professor Layton game, I just have a picture of the ocarina that was featured in it. Let's see. So it's just a little, in case you have the game and you're wondering where is the ocarina, this is what it looks like. Just a little brown ocarina, maybe a 10 hole, maybe a 12 hole, I don't know. But yeah, there's that. And then we have, I thought this was interesting as well. And if you've ever played any fighting games and you're into Soul Calibur 4 is has ocarinas in it. I did not know this until I read it online. My favorite character uses Talim or Talim, depending on how you say it. And she apparently has a set of joke weapons, which if you know, she uses a knife, 2 knives that she holds with her hand, and the knives are parallel with her arms, so she just cuts people. And she apparently has something where it would be more of an ocarina than a knife. And according to what I found online, I couldn't find any pictures, but according to what I read online, it was something to kind of acknowledge. Apparently fans would ship Talim and Link because Link was in one of the Soul Calibur games, and that's the reason why she has ocarinas as a joke weapon is what I read online. So I guess that was supposed to be some kind of nod to the fan shipping. I don't know much else about it, to be honest with you. And Jess, did you want to say something? I see we got a raised hand here. Let me see. Jess, did you want to say something?
Yeah. Am I on? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I just remembered right as you went into the video game bit, there's one scene in an early episode of Katekyo Hitman Reborn where Leon, the shape-changing chameleon, is going through this sickness where he randomly turns into different shapes, and one of them is an ocarina.
Oh, okay.
I used to have a picture of it, but I'm not sure where it is right now. But it's one of the early episodes, like I think maybe in the early 20s. But it's just a throwaway. Like there's no playing or anything. There's just one point where he's being held and he's an ocarina. But also in one episode of Doug, not an anime, but
yes,
one episode of Doug, Skeeter makes an ocarina out of a 3-day-old roll from the cafeteria or something like that.
Yes, I love Doug, and I do remember that episode. Thank you, Jess. I really appreciate it, man.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, thanks. Cool. I completely forgot to mention Doug. I didn't even think about that. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for reminding me of that. But yeah, and we have two more. There was Harvest Moon, Hero of Leaf Valley. You can buy an ocarina from Lewis's item shop for 450 gold, and you use it to teach your dog different types of tricks. I actually have a picture. I don't think you guys need to see it really, but it's just a little table of what buttons you press when you're playing the ocarina. The button combinations correspond to a certain trick or talent you can teach the dog. So I thought that was just a cool little thing to throw in. And the last one I have that everybody knows about is on the Switch, of course. Was Animal Crossing New Horizons. If anyone has that game and you don't have me as a friend, contact me privately. I love that game. But there is an ocarina in it. You can make it with, I think it's like 5 lumps of clay or 3 lumps of clay or something like that. Let me see. I have the screen cap of it. But just in case you maybe haven't seen the game yet, I can also show you. So here we have, it is 5, okay. But you can actually make a little ocarina, and when you play it in the game, it unfortunately plays a random note. You can't actually play a song with it, but I was told that if you play it while there's recorded music playing in the game, it'll harmonize with it, I believe. Somebody correct me on that if I'm wrong, please. But yeah, I thought that was really cool. That's one of the things that happens not too far into the game, excuse me. And yeah, so I think that's everything I have. It harmonizes with other instruments. Thank you, Jess. But that's just about everything I have. I know it's only 6:33, so if you guys have anything to add or you have any questions, please let me know. I hope you enjoyed the panel. That's the information I have right now.
There are
Will I
a
be
few
going over
questions
Yeah.
that are in the question and answer part. If you don't mind answering a few of them.
Oh no, I don't mind at all. Okay. What is my favorite game to an anime song to play on Ocarina? Okay. My favorite anime song to play on Ocarina, I actually am a hardcore fan of an early 90s anime called Magic Knight Rayearth. It's a clamp anime, which kind of tells you how old it is. But the opening song is really fun, and it's mildly challenging. You have to have a double to play it correctly, but it's got those G sharp to F finger switches on the second chamber. G sharp to F sharp, excuse me. And I learned that one, and I was so proud to learn that because it's just really hard, and I really love the anime. So that's probably my favorite anime one to play. As far as video games, my favorite song to play, oh boy. I probably had to say the Mario theme. I know that's a little bit weird to say, but it's basically the reason why I'm married now, because my husband came around the corner and had me playing Totoro and Mario, so maybe those should be my 2 answers. But he was like, yeah, that's the reason I started talking to you, and you know what, like how many years later we got married. So I guess that would be my favorite because I have memories attached to that. I really do like playing, what's the first stage of Sonic? Is it the Green Hill Zone? I could play that. I learned that for a panel. That one's fun to play also. But I hope that answers that question. So that one, I'm smiling at chat, laughing at chat. As for the other question, which one do you think is the most realistic one? Proper ergonomics and correct hole size and placement. That is an excellent question. Wow. I don't know. I guess the one that looks the closest that I've seen might be the Naruto one with I think it's Rangiku is the name of the character. If I had to pick, but I mean, once again, some of this I haven't actually seen in context with the anime. So that, or, you know, that might be a little bit hard to answer, but I really do, I think that one would be the best. So I hope that answers that question. Oh, I have 2 hands up. Let's see. Charles, did you have a question?
Yes, ma'am. If
Go
yeah,
ahead.
if you had a favorite ocarina to play, what would it be from a favorite video game? What song would be from your favorite movie or video game?
If you're gonna play a song on Ocarina, can you repeat that for me, please?
If you had a favorite song from a movie on Ocarina, that one. If you had a favorite song from a movie that you like to play on Ocarina, what would it be and why?
From any movie or anything? Oh man, this is such a broad question. It's more than just video games and anime. A movie. I do. This is gonna sound like a cop out, but I really do like to play the opening Pokemon theme. Not necessarily from Pokemon 2000, but the actual opening theme that everybody knows from the 90s. I learned that one, and I guess you could technically say that's from Detective Pikachu. So I'm just gonna stick with that. But that's another fun one to play because so many people my age know that song, and once you play it at a con, they're instantly like, "Oh my gosh, I know that song," and they'll come over and start singing it with you or something. So I think that's my answer. Thank you, Charles.
Thank you, Miss Wiggins.
And we have another question, another raised hand. Excuse me. I'm not sure how to pronounce your name. I'm so sorry. Did you have a question for us? Hi.
Sorry. It wasn't exactly a question. I just wasn't sure exactly what to bring this up because it wasn't like an example from anime or video games exactly. But I just thought it was interesting. Are you familiar with Webtoon, like webcomics?
I am not.
Okay, well, there's this webtoon. It's kind of like basically a Korean manga translated to English called A Bittersweet Life, and it's like a comedy slice of life. It's really nice. And there's this one episode where the main character is trying to remember where she met this guy who she sees at a coffee shop. And in like her flashback, she's like, "Oh, it was when I was at university in Ocarina Club. We were like sitting under the tree playing ocarinas together, and it was and I thought that was kind of funny when you brought up like people were talking about ocarina love, because it's kind of like that moment, except it turns out he actually owes her money. He like asked, "Can I borrow $80?" And like she's like, but I just thought it was interesting because it's like an example of ocarina being brought up just like casually as just like a normal part of life. You know, normally we think like, oh yeah, Ocarina of Time or like the magical stuff, but just seeing it kind of represented in, oh yeah, I was in Ocarina Club in college. I don't know. I just thought that was kind of cool.
And that is really cool. Thank you.
I can send the link to the specific episode to the chat if that's all right.
Yeah, go for it. I think so, yeah. That's really cool. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. Cool. Okay, well, I don't really have anything else. I know we have 20 minutes. So, Nicholas, what do you suggest?
Hey, that's no problem. I actually was just getting into the link that he sent, so I was like reading down what you were saying that. So sorry about that. But oh my goodness, what a fun and insightful little presentation we just made. That was super duper cool. If you have any last questions for Emily, feel free to leave them either in the Q&A or leave them in the chat. Let me start my video real quick. Oh, actually, I can't, but that's okay. So I was just going to say, please show your appreciation for Emily because she took a lot of time to put this presentation together. She's very excited about it, and so was I. This is one of my favorite presentations of the festival, and I know I got a lot of requests of having a part 2 of doing this one, so I hope you guys enjoyed this one a lot. Just a really fun and happy note to end this on. Emily, the last kind of questions that I personally have for you, and I couldn't put it in the Q&A because for some reason I'm not allowed to type in it. But so my question to you is, and I'm kind of just thinking from Fabio's presentation to this presentation as well. My mind is kind of linking them both together. I love Fabio's presentation because it talks about the past and the history of Ocarina, but we don't really talk as much about the present of Ocarina. And I know that there's
Oh.
like a lot of like different ways, not just media, but different ways in which the ocarina is showcased in our everyday lives. I mean, as people who, you know, watch anime, video games, things like that. Um, and how would you say that, just as an ending note, anime and video games have kind of influenced the trajectory of what the ocarina has gone through as an instrument, if that makes sense? I hope that question made sense and was clear.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Okay.
Oh wow, that's a big question. Um,
Just in your
I think
opinion.
it. Sure, yeah, I got you. I would say I gotta think of how to put it into words because it's one of those things, you know, where you had the big abstract ideas and you try to put it together into words can be a little bit difficult. I would say it's definitely helped the image of the ocarina, if that makes any sense. I hope that answers your question a little bit. But I guess it's helped because not everybody would sit down and read a history textbook, and I'm not calling anybody out by saying that about an ocarina. But if it shows up in an anime or a video game, it's just like, oh, what's that? That's so cool. Or if you're already familiar with it, it just kind of serves to, what's the word I'm looking for here? I don't want to say validate because that sounds a little bit judgmental, but it serves to just familiarize, strengthen, something like that. There you go. Your interest in the ocarina that you had to begin with. So I think it's definitely a good thing. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely does. And
Okay,
I just, I don't know, I think it's really powerful to kind of just make notes of like these little tidbits of, you know, like when you get to see the ocarina from Animal Crossing, so you get to see the ocarina from Link's Awakening and things like that that are super duper cool. I love looking at the pictures you put together. I have a lot of questions. I know a few people in the chat were asking if it was possible for you to kind of share your list with the group, and you could send it to me and I can post it on the Facebook group.
Oh yeah, sure.
But just that way everybody can have like a compiled list of kind of like just a short modern history of how that shows up in media.
I forgot one.
Which one? Well, tell us.
I didn't write this down. Oh my
Which one was
goodness. Okay, so it's a video game, and it's like my favorite video game right now, and I can't believe I forgot this. If anybody plays Final Fantasy 14 online, there's an ocarina in that game. I found this a few months ago. I can't believe I forgot this. How did I forget this? There's a ocarina you can buy if you have a certain type of currency and it summons a mount, which means that you can call, I think it's a horse or something that comes and you can ride it around the map and stuff. But it is an ocarina, and I had a picture of the item description, but I have to look to my computer to find it now. But it is in this game that's, you know, just got an expansion a few months ago, and it's still very relevant in that way. So I can't believe I forgot that one, but I'm glad I remembered it at least.
That's
so yeah,
super cool.
I had that one too.
I love it. Yeah,
Yeah.
well, I really just think that this is a way that, you know, like just people that wouldn't normally like really pay attention to music get into music, because I you know, I'm as a background of a music teacher, I really love to just like see what drives people to learn music. And a lot of people really get inspired by ocarinas being shown in Legend of Zelda and Dragon Ball Z, and that's just super cool that the tradition that started multi-generations ago gets to be continued by all these like really interesting and different stories. So I don't know, I think that that's super cool, and I love the way you just presented each one of them individually.
Thank you.
All right, well, let's show one more time our appreciation for Emily. Thank you for presenting, Emily. You did great. You did awesome. I have one last announcement before everybody else logs off of the Zoom call, so please stay on for just a moment. I want to kind of talk you through how we're going to do our virtual Zoom session for Social Hour, so hang tight for just a minute. All right, so can you guys hear me okay? Can you guys see me? Okay, sweet. No, you don't have to turn it off if you don't want to. Okay, so up until now, we've just had kind of people sitting in a webinar, which, you know, that's really cool. But at the same time, it's harder because usually our Ocarina festivals are more interactive and they have a big social component to them. So I know that right now, because of COVID, things have been different. I love that we're making this work and that this is like something unique and cool that is a tradition we can keep going from this year and from last year. So one attempt to kind of like just like really hammer down on like our social aspect to it, because there is a lot of like bonding and like really different things that have been brought up, just people that know each other, people that I don't know that I've seen that I'm like, wow, I wish we could like meet those people in person, you know. I wanted to just extend that opportunity to kind of have a Zoom virtual hangout. It was originally scheduled for 7 p.m. Central Time. I'm gonna go ahead and keep it to the original schedule because there's no concert tonight. There's no event tonight other than that. And I think it just even work out better to just have kind of an informal session. If you eat dinner at that time, feel free to eat dinner. You don't have to be super social. With this, once again, I'm going to go ahead and just share that Zoom link meeting. And as you've noticed, I've started to share them 30 minutes before the meeting, just kind of to mitigate any issues that we've had and to increase our security. I'll be personally monitoring the session as well and kind of just leading it. I have a few games that we could play and a few fun things we could discuss and talk about. But yeah, if you all would love to come to that one, I invite you to it. I think it's going to be fun. I know today was kind of a long day. It's the biggest day with all the sessions and information. Not every day of the festival is going to be like this, but today's one of my favorite days because I love knowing more things and I love sessions and informations. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you guys so much for attending. So happy. And I hope I get to see you at 7. I'll post the link 30 minutes beforehand. Just please feel free to let me know. And if there's like somebody that you want to invite, just feel free to send me like a message or something, or add me on Facebook or something like that. That way we could make sure that they're there as well. All right, guys. Thank you guys so much for being here. Gosh, this was a long day, but it was such a good day. I can't wait to see y'all tonight if y'all are coming, and I can't wait for tomorrow's session at 10 a.m. Central Time. Just check back on the Facebook group. That's where I'm going to be posting everything. And thank you so much, Yoko, for coming up with those brilliant flyers for the schedule. We'll see you guys later. And yeah, you're welcome, David. Thank you. Thank you, guys.